hit subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father, I have black sons. Hey man, I do what I do.
What's up? Welcome, everybody. My name is Dennis Spurling, and I'd like to welcome you all to the broadcast. I ask that you make sure that when you come on in, you hit the subscribe button. And if you like what I'm doing, hit the like button. And I'd also appreciate it if you all would help me get to 200,000, as I've already got to 100,000. I want to go ahead and up the ante. I want to give an acknowledgement to the folks who are here first. Big shout out to everybody in the chat room right now. My Mr. 43TX, man, you are always number one up in here, man. Pooh Man 3138, thank you so much, and everybody else in here. I appreciate you guys. So the title of the broadcast tonight is When Fear of Black People Becomes a Legal Defense to Murder. And this is in reference to a case, Carter v. United States, 341A. 38-1065. It is a district. It is from the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. A very, 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 very important. A lot of our Supreme Court justices start there. So I want to go ahead and break this down. I think it's very important. And I'm telling you, I promise you guys, if you hang around, we are not going to have a law school session. Okay, I do more than just talk about the law. I make it real for you. Okay, I make it real for you. And what I'm saying is that I'm going to explain some things to you based on this court ruling and the direction that we seem to be heading that some of you may find alarming. And I say alarming because we are literally going to be changing. The law seems to be catching up with society. Somebody typed degeneracy in the chat room. You're like, what does this case have to do with degeneracy? Give me a minute. But let me go ahead and say this. If you learn something, I should earn something. But I also want to add to that, you don't owe me anything. I do this. It's a labor of love. I appreciate you guys. However, the subscriber count and the donation count and the likes and the shares is a way in which we keep score. In other words, you guys have migrated to my broadcast because, well, let me say it like this. I don't have any viral videos on my channel. I don't. For the most part, for the past 4 or 5 years, I have painstakingly built my audience one subscriber at a time. And it's only recently that I got a big bump from Willie D. And then prior to that, the only reason I got a big bump after Kevin Samuels' passing was because I was the only one on YouTube speaking the truth. And so I've been rewarded by the YouTube algorithm and subscribers because I've been the one speaking the truth, even when it's not popular. So, you know, it's important for me. Well, let me say it like this. If you guys want to, if you want more people on YouTube actually speaking the truth instead of sensationalism, then you have to reward the ones who are willing to go out on the ledge and speak the truth with subscriber count and likes. And again, you don't owe me anything. I certainly do appreciate the super chats and the cash apps and the PayPal if you learn something. But you know, for the most part, I'm just happy you're here. Happy. Somebody type, he's happy. he is happy you're here. Happy. Everybody in the chat room type happy. Well, anyway, so I'm going to answer some questions. So for generations, you know, the court have used some version of the reasonable person standard. Somebody type reasonable man standard. We talked about a lot of that as it relates to Carmelo Anthony case, the case and Allison case. Chud the Builder case, the reasonable man standard. Okay, somebody type reasonable man in the chat room. The reasonable man standard. Okay, and you know, under the circumstance, what a reasonable person would believe, thought, or done in any situation, and that's in any particular situation where a jury or a judge has to evaluate conduct. And that standard shows up everywhere. It shows up in criminal law, as I said, when we're talking about self-defense. What would a reasonable person believe at the moment? Would they believe their life is in danger, or serious bodily injury, or a person or another, you know, which would bring about third-party self-defense? It shows up in police encounters. Okay, what would a reasonable police officer do? It shows up in excessive force cases. It shows up in negligence cases. It shows up in civil rights cases. And it's one of the basic building blocks of American law. It's one of the first things you learn in law school, first week. But now we may be watching the beginning of a major shift. Now, the case I'm referring to is Carter v. United States 341A 3D. I'm sorry, 1067. It's out of the District Court, Columbia Court of Appeals. I'm actually going to do something amazing for you all, and I'm going to put this in the window so you guys can see it. Okay, and you can look that citation up. And the DC Court of Appeals held that asking a black man to hike his pants up during a suspicionless police encounter constitutes a seizure under the Fourth Amendment, and vacated the convictions because the officers lacked reasonable suspicion or probable cause at the moment. I want you to think about that. And I know that's a lot of legalese, but here are the basic facts. On September afternoon, 2020, four Metro Police Department from the gun recovery units, or those their officers, they can I speak a little Ebonics if y'all don't mind? Four cops ran up on a black man on the sidewalk in Ward 4 in DC. Can I say it like that? Is that a little easier? Is that better? But anyway, they didn't have any suspicion of any criminal activity. The officers, they were wearing their tactical gear, okay, their vests. They had handcuffs and firearms, and they were responding to an uptick in shootings and sounds of gunfire in the area. That doesn't necessarily mean they thought he did it. They were just generally out there on patrol. Four cops roll up on you with tactical gear, handcuffs, and firearms. Put yourself in that situation, okay? One of the officers, his name was Dale Burrell, he approached the appellant or the defendant, the black guy who they were arresting, Dante Carter, from behind and asked if he was carrying a gun or a firearm. Of course, Dante said, "No, I ain't got nothing on me." He denied it twice. He even lifted up his shirt to show his waistband, okay? The officer then said, hike up your pants. In other words, pull your pants up, okay? Which Carter did. And another officer noticed a bulge in Carter's groin area. Now, y'all might think that's his manhood, but that wasn't it, okay? That's not it. He believed it to be a firearm, and after a brief struggle, because, you know, Dante tried to roll up out of there, right? Dante like, "Nah, y'all know I got this DC, they strap on me out here." And shout out to Pete 6300. But either way, after a struggle, you know, stop resisting, stop all that, they recovered the stolen gun. So not only did he have a gun in the shorts, it was a stolen gun, okay? It's stolen gun, right? He's going to jail, right? He is going to jail. Somebody type "go to jail" in the chat room. You got a stolen gun, okay? A stolen gun in your groin. Now, you could have shot your manhood off, okay? But either way, Carter was charged with 8 firearm-related offenses. His lawyer moved to suppress the gun at a subsequent statement, arguing that the request to hike his pants up was an unreasonable seizure under the 14th Amendment. Now, this is a stolen gun. Dante got a stolen gun in his crotch. Not just a gun, but a stolen gun, and he probably got caught a resisting arrest. He's supposed to go to jail, right? Isn't he supposed to go to jail? Who'd you steal the gun from? Who let that gun be out to be stolen? Did you leave your gun at the Starbucks next to your cell phone, and then Dante just rolled up and took it. I'm just saying, somebody tried to go to jail in the chat room. You going to jail. But anyway, so he said, hey, you know what? You didn't have a reason even. You had no suspicion, no reasonable suspicion to pull him over, no probable cause. Why are you asking this black man to hike his pants up? What's going on with that? But either way, the Superior Court denied the motion, and they found that the seizure occurred only after Carter raised his pants, and that the officers had a reasonable suspicion based on the bulge. And the DC Court of Appeals, they reversed it, okay? And the legal issue is whether Carter was seized within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment when the officer asked him to hike his pants up, and whether the seizure was supported by a reasonable suspicion of probable cause. Okay, so the question is, and let me say it like this: at what point did the police encounter stop being voluntary and become a seizure under the Fourth Amendment? In other words, did he feel free to leave? And as a black man, somebody type black man, okay, black man, the DC Court of Appeals concluded that Carter, Dante, was seized when the officer requested he hike his pants up. And the court noted that the officer's show of authority and accusatory and repetitive questioning of Dante status as a black man in a highly policed area, it held that a reasonable person in his position would not have felt free to terminate the encounter. Because the seizure wasn't supported by reasonable suspicion or probable cause, it was unreasonable. And the court vacated the conviction. Shout out to RN Olu 88. Do you hear me? You got a stolen gun in your crotch, Dante. And the court basically set him free. Somebody typed Harriet Tubman in the chat room. The court said, nah, he didn't feel free to go. And y'all held him there. And so because of that, this is called fruits of a poisonous tree. Okay, this is another concept you learn in criminal procedure if you ever decide to go to law school. But again, the majority of these judges emphasize that under DC precedent, when the facts don't allow an objective determination of seizure, then the court needs to consider the defendant's race. In other words, if there's no objective reason to believe he sees that what's on the defendant's mind? They need his race. And here's another one. I want y'all to remember lived experiences. I want you to just think about that. Now we're considering people's lived experiences to determine whether or not they act reasonable or not. Shout out to Jerry Neely. Just think about that. We are analyzing people's lived experiences. Think about that. Sit on that for a minute. To determine whether a person is acting reasonable, we're going to rely on their race and their lived experience. This is out the DC court. This is DC. Okay, so they let Dante off, and of course the state, of course DC said hell no. The government said hell no. So they tried to appeal it. Okay, but see, the thing is, this decision underscores the DC Court of Appeals approach to the Fourth Amendment seizure analysis, particularly suspicionless encounters, and highlights the role of race and context in determining whether a person felt free to terminate. And basically, this DC court is distinguishing between how if a black man felt free under a reasonable black man standard, okay, or as opposed to the regular benign standard, okay. Now, the Supreme Court didn't issue the government. Like I said, the government asked the Supreme Court to review the case, and the Supreme Court didn't issue merits opinion regarding this. Okay, they did, because had they done that, it would have altered the law or affirmed the law. But let's be clear about something. The Supreme Court denied the review of the writs, but that's not the same. It is the denial of certiorari isn't the same thing as the Supreme Court saying we agree, but refusing to take the case and say, hey, DC appellate court, you guys are wrong. It's two left shoes. Y'all are wrong as hell. They didn't say that. They kind of just let it hang out there. Now, Justice Samuel Alito and Justice Clarence Thomas, who I know y'all hate him, right? They dissented. from the denial of the certiorari. And in plain English, Alito and Thomas said, we need to look at this case. They were concerned that the DC court injected race into what is supposed to be an objective constitutional test. Somebody type reasonable black man standard. A reasonable black man would feel like he better not go anywhere or they're going to shoot him in the back, put the knee on his neck and hold him down for 9 minutes or something. You see what I'm saying? But here's the thing. It opened the door to consider race when deciding and lived experience when deciding whether a police encounter amounted to a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. In other words, instead of asking only whether a reasonable person would have felt free to leave, the court allowed consideration of whether a reasonable black man, based on his race and his lived experiences in that position, would have felt free to leave. So now the court must consider the defendant's race and lived experiences. That is not very good. Now, I know some of you all are like, yay for us, because, you know, y'all have gone into y'all little racial corners and, you know, anything good for us is bad for the other team. I know. However, I don't see it that way. Okay. Now, again, you know, some people are going to hear that and immediately say, well, that makes sense. Black people do have experiences and encounters with the police that are differently. And as a black man or a black woman or a mother of a black man or black child, I understand the argument. Okay. And I'm not pretending that the police encounters, you know, affect everybody the same way. They don't. But here's the legal problem. Once you adjust the reasonable person standard for race and lived experience, where does it stop? If the law can ask what a reasonable black man would believe, then he can also ask what a reasonable Hispanic man could believe, or a reasonable Asian man, or a reasonable Muslim man, or a reasonable white man would believe. What about a reasonable woman with a wooden leg and a kickstand? What would she believe? What about a reasonable woman on her menstrual cycle? I'm just saying, let me just throw it out there, okay? What about a reasonable elderly person or a reasonable immigrant, okay? I'm just saying, what about a reasonable person with PTSD? Okay, what about a reasonable person who grew up in a high crime neighborhood or a reasonable police officer who claims he had prior bad experiences with certain groups? And see, that's the door this opens. And the most dangerous place this could go is self-defense. Somebody type self-defense in the chat room. Somebody type Carmelo Anthony in the chat room. Somebody type Chud the Builder in the chat room. Somebody type, think of some more names. Huh? Somebody type Trayvon Martin in the chat room. Okay? Self-defense is built around reasonableness. And the question is usually whether the person reasonably believed force or deadly force was immediately necessary. So what happens when that standard becomes identity and lived experience based? This is a real case. What happens when a white man shoots a black man and says, based on my lived experiences, my fears, what I've seen these black people do in the media and social media, I've heard about the crime. I believe what I believed about black men, I reasonably feared for my life. Does he get to argue for a reasonable white man standard? Does he get to bring racial perception into the courtroom? I mean, you know, y'all would have a fit. Shout out to Jessica Rabbit. A reasonable white man in my position would have been afraid. What if that really becomes a self-defense? See, that's not a small issue. That's a massive issue. And that is the door that this liberal court in DC has opened, because if courts allow race to make fear more reasonable in one context, lawyers like me who pay attention to these cases, right, and put them in our little, put another arrow in our quiver, are going to try to use race to make fear more reasonable in that context. Fear and lived experiences. Somebody type lived experiences. And once that happens, black people better be careful, okay? Because the same legal theory that may help a black defendant in a police seizure escape a crime that he clearly was guilty of, a stolen gun, somebody type Dante with the stolen gun, could be twisted and used against a black victim in a self-defense case. or a police shooting. What would a reasonable white police officer from the suburbs who's only seen TikTok videos of black people beating each other up, how would he feel? What about a reasonable ICE agent who's down on the on the border and he sees a guy with a hood on and he thinks it's the cartel? Huh? And see, that's why this issue can't be treated emotionally. It has to be treated legally. The law has always tried to keep the reasonable person standard objective. And that distinction matters because everybody has fears. Everybody has perceptions. Everybody has experiences, but not every fear is reasonable and deserves legal protection. For instance, if you just sitting down and somebody is standing around you, you can't say, I feared being jumped. That's not a reasonable expectation that people can get with. Okay, but if you throw, I was a black boy who was 100-something pounds, you understand what I'm saying? Slippery slope. In other words, not every stereotype gets to become reasonable. If the reasonable person standard becomes too customized, then it stops being objective. It becomes personal. It becomes racial. It becomes political. It becomes cultural. And once that happens, the court stops asking, what would a reasonable person do? And start asking, what would a reasonable person from this racial identity with those lived experiences do? And that may sound progressive in one case, but it become very dangerous in the next. Because look, law doesn't stay in the lane where you first put it. Lawyers test boundaries. Prosecutors test boundaries. Defense attorneys test boundaries. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about some real issues, not emotional issues, not social media version. We're going to learn some stuff. And it's going to be boring as hell. I promise you. I hope I bore you all to death. But it's going to be funny. And you're going to learn a lot. Okay? Now, again, once this door is open, we need to understand exactly who may walk through it. Now, let me show you how this can be exploited, how courtrooms work. And this is how a rule created for one purpose can turn around and be used for something else. Shout out to Yardley. Thank you so much. All right. Imagine this scenario. White man is sitting in his pickup truck outside a convenience store at night. A black man walks across the parking lot. Black man is unarmed. He isn't threatening anybody. He isn't attacking anybody. Maybe he's wearing a hoodie. Maybe he's walking quickly because it's raining. Maybe he glances toward the truck because somebody is staring at him. Okay? Maybe he walks too close to the truck because the path to the store, maybe some homeless man done peed in the middle of the goddamn, excuse my language, peed in the middle of the parking lot, so he don't want to step in it. All right? But the white man has a pistol in his vehicle. He has a concealed carry license. He pulls out his pistol and he shoots the unarmed black man. Now the black man is dead. And here comes the legal argument. He later said he was afraid. He says that he thought a black man was reaching for something. He says he's seen videos online of black people robbing and carjacking and assaulting and shooting. Somebody typed degeneracy in the chat room. Somebody typed your reputation is everything in the chat room. Okay. He says he follows all the crime pages. He's seen every episode, the first 48. He says he watches social media clips daily. He said he death scrolling, right? He says the internet has shown him what can happen when a young black male or a black male approaches his car at night, and he says he didn't have time to wait. He says he reasonably believed he was about to seriously hurt or be killed. The defense lawyer stands up and says, ladies and gentlemen, the law doesn't require my client to be right. We know that's true. The law only requires him to be responsible under the circumstances as they appeared at the moment. That's the danger, because self-defense doesn't always require the person to be correct. A person can be mistaken and still claim self-defense. If a mistake was reasonable, that's why the reasonable person standard matters so much. The whole question becomes whether the fear was reasonable at the time. So now ask yourself this. If the courts are going to allow race and lived experiences to help define what a reasonable black man believes during a police encounter, what stops a defense lawyer from arguing that race and lived experiences also help define what a reasonable white man believes during a confrontation with a black person or an Asian man. See, that's the trap. Somebody typed the trap in the chat room. And see, the lawyer may say the lawyer may not say it as ugly as I'm saying it. He may dress it up. He may say, or she may say, this isn't about racism. This is about lived experience. He may say this is about perception. This is about this is about the world that we live in right now. It's about what my client has consumed online. Okay. And he's going to talk about some realities and examples of violent attacks and statistical. And the jury's going to be like, yeah, well, you know, we have seen that stuff too. Okay. My client was scared. My client had seconds to act. And there it is. Acquittal. Somebody type not guilty in the chat room. Okay. And the same language used to explain why a black man may reasonably fear police can be flipped to explain why a white person may fear a black man. And see, that's why this is dangerous. Okay, because we're not just talking about black people who some people have labeled low class, criminals, suspicious, dangerous, or degenerate. We're talking about black people, black doctors, black lawyers, black college students, black fathers, black delivery men, black women. Okay, because y'all dangerous too, ladies. They are considering y'all dangerous too. Black teenagers walking home, black woman sitting in the car, minding her business, a black man going to the store, a black child cutting through a parking lot. The stereotype doesn't stop and ask for your resume. And see, when the public image of black people is constantly tied to crime, danger, aggression, robbery, carjacking, violence, and fear, then that image follows us. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how you speak. It doesn't matter whether you've ever committed a crime in your life. To a fearful person, you can become the stereotype before you ever open your mouth. And if the law starts allowing identity-based fear, okay, if it started lived experience-based fear to shape what's reasonable, then the stereotype can walk into court. And that's where it gets deadly. It's a problem. What about a white woman? She's got her little baby stroller in her Starbucks, and she's jogging through the freshly regentrified hood, and a black man walks by her. He don't touch her. He doesn't threaten her. He's going to his car, okay? He hung out with his little side piece. Okay, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. He on his way home to his wife. He minding his business. You know, he's scratching. You know what you do. You put your pants on and whatnot. Anyway, she feels threatened, okay? And she had to protect her baby, all right? He might, like I said, he reaching for his keys that he might have fumbling around for. She think he's reaching for a knife, okay? He's just trying to exist in her space. She could be wrong. She might, in her mind, imagine he looked at me wrong. He moved too close. She felt trapped, her and her baby. She's seen the videos online. She's seen the attacks. She's heard the rhetoric. She's read the stories about violent crime. Now, she had a black boyfriend in college, but you know, that's been long since removed. She's returned herself to the white world, right? Either way, she feels vulnerable. She's alone. She believes she's about to be assaulted. She pulls out her little pew-pew and pops it. We'll just say he didn't die, but they're trying to prosecute her for aggravated assault. Does her lawyer get to argue a reasonable white woman standard? Does the jury get to consider her sex, her race, her social conditioning? How would a white woman with a baby feel in this freshly regentified area, right? Her internet exposure, her fear of black men or black people in general, her belief that she was vulnerable. Does that become part of the objective reasonableness? That's not a small problem. That's a legal explosion. Did y'all see the case? I can put the case back up there because y'all know I'm not messing around. So when I saw this, it's like, oh my God, this is revolutionary. You know, this is amazing to me. I know it's boring to y'all, but it's, man, because this is a land of laws, not people. And this is how the laws are made. You see? Now, again, the standard is always allowed some room for a human mistake. And the law doesn't always ask whether they were right. Did they ask reasonable? And if you got a jury full of white women, they're gonna be like, yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. Somebody type not guilty. Okay? Because if a person can be reasonably wrong, and you can take into account their lived experiences, as the DC appellate court says, race becomes part of the deciding what's reasonable. Then we've opened the door that we can't close. Now, check this out. I want to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Black Americans. Somebody type saving lives in the chat room. Somebody type saving lives in the chat room. That's what we do. Somebody type saving lives in the chat room. See, negative stereotypes didn't start because somebody saw a video online, did they? Black people. I mean, they have to be filming something, right? These are not all paid actors, are they? On these videos we see on social media? They're not all paid actors. We know that, right? But see, what social media has done is take that conduct that used to be local in somewhere like the South Bronx or Compton or somewhere in Georgia or Little Rock, Arkansas, or all over Mississippi and Alabama. They just got the most ratchet videos available. But it's made it not just local, but now it's national. Now it's international. What used to be seen by one neighborhood can now be seen by the entire world before dinner. And that matters. When Black teens organize these chaotic teen meetups and they swarm shopping malls in Florida and they fight in the street and jump on cars and destroy property and curse out strangers or record themselves doing something reckless, that video doesn't just stay in their city. It goes everywhere. White people see it. Hispanics see it, Asians see it, Africans see it, Caribbean people see it, Indians see it, Pakistanis see it, Chinese immigrants see it, Europeans see it, the whole world sees it. And whether we like it or not, Black people, most of these people have limited contact with Black Americans to start off with, and this is how they form their entire idea of who Black people are from the worst videos they see online. And that is dangerous. Somebody type saving lives. Because see, now connect that to this developing legal issue. If courts begin allowing race and racial perception or lived experiences to shape what counts as reasonable, then image becomes more than just a social problem. It becomes a legal problem. Somebody type legal problem. It becomes a courtroom problem. It becomes a life and death problem. Imagine an immigrant from India or Pakistan or China or anywhere else, comes to the United States, doesn't know many Black people, may not know any Black people personally. All he knows is what he's seen on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, or some crime page. Somebody type First 48. Non-stop videos of Black people fighting, robbing, looting, carjacking, acting wild. And now he sees a Black child walking near him in the parking lot. Okay, the Black child is unarmed. The Black child hadn't threatened him. Black child may just be going to the store or going to work or delivering some food or looking for his car. But the immigrant says he was afraid for his life. He says this is what I saw online. This is what I was told about Black Americans. This is what the video showed me. I thought I was about to get jacked or carjacked or attacked. And then so he pulls a knife or a gun and he unalives that child. Now what? Legally, that shouldn't be enough, right? A person shouldn't be able to just unalive somebody, an unarmed Black person, and say, well, Your Honor, TikTok made me scared. That shouldn't be the law, right? But see, the danger is that once courts start letting race into reasonable person analysis, we lawyers are going to test the limits. And we're going to ask whether a reasonable alien or immigrant from another country with negative stereotypes of Black people would be perceived as danger. Again, they'll dress it up, but that's the crux of it. Okay? Now, because this doesn't just affect the black person who's actually doing wrong, this affects all black people. And the stereotype attaches itself to the skin first. And once somebody has decided that black equals danger, your resume doesn't matter anymore. Not until after you're dead. And this is why public image matters. Now, I have some videos because I want to prove the point, because some of y'all don't believe I'm saying what's true. Okay. And I'm going to do my best to give some commentary, and we'll talk about it. But you all have seen this stuff before. I don't have to go over into too much terrible detail. I'm not going to play all these ratchet videos, but I want my black brothers and sisters, remember, come on in. This is for you. I want you to see, what the public is seeing. Is that fair? Can I do that? Can we do that? Can we show what the rest of the world is saying? This is just some stuff that I've picked up on the internet. Okay, this is just some basic stuff that I saw on the internet. Nothing too much, but let's take a look at some of the ratchetness that we see going on. Somebody type fair use in the chat room.
Black culture is failing. Look no further.
So female think they need a man. You're miserable, because you don't need. You need yourself.
Okay.
You don't think that? Do you think your mother need a man?
I do.
For what?
For everything. I mean, it makes it easier. Life.
You think females need men?
Yes.
I could use my rose and get my nut off. I never needed a man.
But everything is not about sex, though.
Everything not money-wise. I'm a whole pharmacy technician. I get money.
Now, I want you to understand something. This young lady is a pharmacy technician, and she gets money. And what that drives home is it's not about education, and it's not about income, okay? Because what we're dealing with is not a poverty problem. What we're dealing with is I hate to say it. I hate to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it. What we're dealing with is a values problem, okay? What we're dealing with is a dignity problem, okay? So, again, there was a time when you could separate yourself based on money. And look, I want y'all to hang in there, because I'm going to explain in detail, like nobody else, how we got here, how we got from these well-dressed, mannerable black people. And of course, we had some ratchet folks way back in the day. But how do we go from that to this? Okay. How did we get here? I'm telling you guys, you're going to learn a lot. Okay. But just the over infatuation.
Out here. I don't need no man. Men don't do but you over. Take your life.
Okay. And again, she might be expressing herself, but the profanity, the over indulgence in sex, this is the presentation being made to the rest of the world. And this is the perception that they have of black people. Okay. Now, of course, this does not represent all black people, but of course, the lowest contingent has the mic. This is a spectacle. People are going to put the cameras on this person. Now, I'm not going to show the whole video because I don't want to give that any level of promotion on my broadcast, but I think it's important. Here's another one that is very unfortunate. I'm going to let you see this. This is just more tragedy, okay? Just more tragedy. These kids, some kids. Okay? Again. Yeah, that is a baby gun that baby is pointing at the TikTok camera, talking about rapping Dusty Red. Is that her name? Sexy Red rapping. Well, I'm a Dusty Red. That's what she's doing. Okay, this is what's being represented as black culture. Yep, somebody typed broken home, and it looks like that little boy is participating in some. You got the police looking, right? Somebody called CPS, but you have the boy was consuming some Snoop Dogg. We'll call it Snoop Dogg. You understand what I'm saying? And so again, this is the representation of Black culture to the world. So what would a reasonable immigrant think about Black people, a Black child, if he's walking by? And I know, look, I get it. We're gonna see. There's a method to the madness. I promise. If y'all hang in there, you're gonna get some answers that you never get. I've been putting this together, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. Here's another one. Okay, we talked earlier about reasonable white woman. What would if a reasonable white woman saw this video? Okay, I think these are Latinas. If a reasonable Latina saw this video, and I don't know what happened beforehand, okay, and you know, next time she sees a Black girl or is being followed by a Black girl, what is she reasonably safe to assume that this is gonna happen to her? Okay, see that? I'm gonna cut it off because I don't want to. I'm not really trying to get demonetized. Okay, but this is just a simple sample of the videos that these people are seeing about Black people. And I know some of y'all are busy. Y'all don't have time to look at this. Y'all come here to see what sort of ratchetness I'm talking about. But trust me, this is what's out there. This is what people are seeing. This is people's perception of the Black community. This is not just nationwide, it is worldwide. There is no escaping it. Okay. I'll look at a couple more and then we're going to
race. Adrian Broner, Dean the Great, humping each other, painted.
This is Adrian Bonner, grown Black man, well-known boxer,
as the lesser than race. Do you know what that does? To outsiders who don't have any idea what we are, it makes them already have
he doing a good job. See what he doing?
a stigma on us. Yo,
that's a funeral. Did you see that? That lady was at the funeral home.
Oh, bro, these guys are foolish. These guys don't promote anything intellectual. Exactly. They are foolish. So they're going based off what they see Adrian Broner and Dean the Great doing. And then Lil Durk. Lil Durk is talking about spinning on blacks.
Hold on, I'm gonna cut you off right.
All right, so
right now, hold on. So you see what I'm saying? You see how the reason we able to.
Now, shout out to all these young people who are pointing out this degeneracy. I certainly appreciate all these very young people. These 20-year-olds are not going for it. They are not with the degeneracy. Shout out to them. Okay. Thank you so much for pointing out the degeneracy.
Embody these spirits of
and so again, right? Image matters. Okay. Your image. You live and die by your image, literally. Okay. Our ancestors understood that. Now, here's the thing, it gets worse. Okay, because along with seeing the ghetto ratchet videos, okay, then we also have to watch you know, stuff like well, you know, we got to watch stuff like this. Shout out to Brandon B. Okay. Look, we got to this day in and day out.
The court sentences Mr. Kelly to a period to the felony of commission of active terrorism to a period of 25 years, range 1, the release eligibility of 30%. Felony convictions.
What did he do to get 221 years? I mean, America is only 250 years old. America is going to be twice as old as it is right now when you get out of prison, sir. Okay? You got 221 years. 221? That sounds like an apartment. Yeah, I'm in room 221. You hear that? That's an address. This dude got a whole address worth of prison years. How do you get 221 years? I mean, how do they expect you? Are they going to let you die, dig you back up, put you in cryo, rehab, and then get you to do some more time? How do we do this? I'm just saying. I'm just asking questions. Okay. Nevertheless, right? People all across, this is not just something that they see in the courthouse. What a shame. What a shame. You never had a relative to work at the court. It's so terrible going on. People are seeing this not just across the nation, all across the world. This affects our image.
Resulting in the defendant be rendered infamous. This is an effective sentence of 3 life sentences, consecutive life sentences.
3
without
life
possibility of parole.
Now I'm gonna ask y'all an honest question. Okay. What would a reasonable person from overseas, let's say a reasonable Asian person, all they've seen is videos like this. What would be their perception of black people? I'm just asking. Hell, what is your perception? All the black people from here. Somebody type FBA in the chat room. All the FBA, all the ADOS, all the salon people. What is your perception? Do you feel safe as a reasonable black person? Do you feel safe when you're around us? I'm just asking. I'm just asking. Would you go to a Lil Durk concert? Would you drop your teenage daughter off that you've been, taking care of and nurtured? Would you drop her off at a Lil Durk concert by herself? Would you be safe? Would you feel safe at the Lil Durk concert on the west side of Chicago at the hall? Would you? Huh? I'm just saying. So if you don't feel safe, if your lived experiences tell you, nah, I'm good, we're gonna go ahead and pass. And what does that say? What does that say about people who have no interaction with black people? Huh? Let's keep listening.
2 counts of first-degree murder. This is a capital offense if you're found guilty.
Will be invoking his right to counsel and right to remain silent.
His mother's in court. Good morning, ma'am.
I think this is the guy that unalived the 2 brothers. He and his girlfriend had an argument, and she called her brothers up, and he, they wouldn't let him in, and he came back and did something, pushed the door in, and unalived both of this woman's brothers.
There's probable cause for the charges. It looks like he shot and killed a girlfriend's 2 brothers. I'm going to grant the state's motion for pretrial detention pending final hearing and hold you with no bond. You will see a judge tomorrow. That judge will set a final hearing on the state's motion for pretrial detention.
I want you to see how cool, calm, and collected the judge is, because she's read that 100 times. Yeah, you murdered 7 people. We're going to go ahead and set the bond hearing aside. Do we have donuts in the back? Because I need some donuts. Is my other robe out the dry cleaners yet? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're going to set this aside. Oh, I'm sorry, not 7, but you killed 10 people. You killed 10 people, and you have a prior of okay. Yeah, so we'll get you together. Can you go ahead and send him back to the jury? The jury pool will get him back after my donuts arrive. You see that? They've seen it so many times. But again, we're talking about stereotypes. We're talking about image. Okay, this is the image of black people that is being broadcast around. Again, there's a method to this. How did we get here? Have any of y'all ever asked, how did we get here? Huh? Okay, and it's not just something like that. You also are dealing with the breakdown of the black community. How did we get here? Let's listen to this brother right here, and he's talking about his situation with his child's mother.
Like, stop you from being a father, nigga. Like, I never saw this coming, man. Like, I've tried everything I need to do, bro, to change my life around, dog, so I could be a better father for my son, bro. I don't know what to do anymore, man. I done went to the court, bro. I done went and found the legitimization, bro. She missed the court date, bro. Had me in the courtroom for 2 hours, bro, on the Zoom, bro. And then the dude get on there like, yeah, nigga, if she ain't here next time, we gonna drop this mug. Like, then y'all got, bro, I don't know what to do, bro. Like, I try to bend over backwards. I try to be a punk, like scary, like act like the weakest dude I can be to get this girl to act nice to me and give me time with my son, bro. I don't understand.
Now, how did we get here? Okay, because this is a symptom, but how did we get to this? How did our culture get like this? Because this wasn't how we were all the way up until like the middle of last century. How do we get here? This is the question that we need to ask ourselves. This is where we are. But again, you can, oh, it's single mothers. Well, why do we have the single mothers in the first place? Oh, because they had sex. Yeah, but why though? Why would somebody think, oh, it's okay to have sex and then not take care of the kids? You understand what I'm saying? How do we get to that point where our values are so low?
A single mother household or having feminine traits because I want to make fun of you. I'm trying to save your ass. When you grow up in a single mother household, there's a lot of shit that you adopt that you don't realize is wrong until you go into the real world. So you mess with a shorty that you really like, or you try to recruit or be inaugurated into a group of men and they don't even fuck with you because of the traits that you have. I've been through that. People try to pass around silent disrespect because you can't read the room. I've been through that. When there is no dad in the household, there's a lot of traits that you don't learn and you have to fucking take ownership for learning. That's hard in itself because there's a lot of shit that's like, damn, I didn't learn this.
He's telling you about the things he missed just growing up with a single mom. And the thing, again, I know this is revolutionary for YouTube because we've gotten to the point where all we say is this single mom, just type single mom in the chat. Single mom, it's a single mom's fault. Okay, but see, here's the problem with that. First of all, that's an oversimplification of the issue. And the reason I can say that is because, well, we have a single mother issue here in the United States, but they have an even worse single mother issue in Brazil and even worse in Colombia. And it's actually even worse in Japan. And that's what we would consider a first world country. In many of those Asian countries, the men can just up and leave their woman and be gone. So look up single mother problem in Japan. So it's not just the single mothers, because if you have a culture that requires certain things from individuals, in other words, a way in which you comport yourself, it wouldn't matter if it was a single mother or a child with a mother and a father. They all have to act in a certain way. So when we say single mother, that's an oversimplification. Because let me say it like this. You got degenerate kids that come out of families with, fathers and mothers. I know that's unfortunate to say, but it's true. Because, if you got a mother and a father who are instilled the same sort of value system in the child, what do you think that child is going to come up with? And not all fathers are equal. I have had the displeasure of taking my son, my youngest son, to football practice. And I meet a lot of young fathers in their 20s. And they have their sons, and I see some of the things they call it. You would think it was a bunch of women out there yelling at the kids, calling them all kind of, get your bitch ass up. I'm like, I don't talk to my son like that. But again, I'm an older father. I'm 52. A lot of these men are 20. So, they are probably young enough to be my sons, and I comport myself different. But remember, they are 5 generations of being raised in this degenerate culture. Now, I think I proved my point that these are the type of videos, and this is mild, and you all will agree that this is mild compared to what's really out there. I didn't put any fighting scenes, anything like that, because I don't want to get demonetized. But and I know people, we have to talk about public image, and we also need to talk about respectability politics. And I know people think that's a dirty word, because it's been used to blame Black people for oppression, as though dressing different or dressing better, speaking better, or behaving better will magically make bigotry disappear. Okay? Bigotry and hate, will hate you if you have a 3-piece suit on. If you have a law degree, a bigot is going to hate you if you have perfect grammar or a clean record and the Bible in your hand. All right? But images have always mattered in a political struggle. And our ancestors understood that. During the Civil Rights era movement, Black people didn't accidentally show up looking disciplined and clean and marching in order, organized, looking respectable. That was a strategy. You see, when Black people marched through some of those hostile, segregated towns, they knew the cameras would be there. They knew the world would be watching. Matter of fact, they planned it that way. And they knew those angry white mobs and police officers and sheriffs and firefighters and segregationists would respond violently. So they gave the world a clear moral picture. On one hand, you have dignified, well-dressed Black families, including moms, women, children, and elderly, in their Sunday best, peacefully asking for basic human rights, while the ugly face of racism is attacking them with dogs and fire hoses and billy clubs and jail cells and rage. And that image changed America. It forced America to look in the mirror. Look at the Birmingham in 1933, 1963, those 3 Black girls, Black children, and the students that marched out of the 16th Street Baptist Church and towards City Hall. And Bull Connor and the police and the fire department responded with dogs and high pressure fire hoses, and those images went across the country and around the world. So people ignoring segregation couldn't ignore it anymore. Same thing with Rosa Parks. Did you all know that Rosa Parks didn't become the face of the Montgomery boycotts? It wasn't an accident. You all know that was planned. You know it was planned. Did you know that was a plan? And the reason being is because she was respected. She was an adult. All right. She had a job. She was a secretary at the local NAACP. She had training and organizer experience. And before Rosa Parks, there was a young lady named Claudette Colvin. She was 15 years old, a little Black girl. Okay. And she also refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery on March 2nd, 1955. And that was organic. It was 9 months before Rosa Parks. That's probably where they got the idea from. But the civil rights leader were worried about her youth. They were worried she was basically poor, working class, and she was dark complected. Okay. And then later on, she got pregnant. So she was an unmarried single mother, teenager. Right. And it would have been easier for white America to dismiss her and the movement. So when Rosa Parks, who was known, educated, was arrested on December 1st, 1955, the organizers knew they had a stronger public symbol. That wasn't accidental. It was a strategy. All right. And people were willing to get behind us. So when people say respectability doesn't matter, they're only half right. Respectability won't stop. It's not going to stop racism. Okay, that's not what we're saying. It's not going to stop racism, but hold on. It's not going to stop racism, but give me 1 second, you guys. I gotta run a. Shout out to everybody who's contributed to Super Chat. I'm glad 15 people learned something. I wish more people had learned something, but we're not finished. But maybe some of you all will learn something. But again, I appreciate you guys. But before we get to this superstar, I need you all to make sure you hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. I don't know if you all have. I have not had an opportunity to check and see if you hit the subscribe button, but I'm looking now. I'm going to look right now to see if you good people care about me enough to hit the subscribe button and help me. Okay, because at this point it's about me. It's about me getting to 100,000 subscribers, and it's taking a long time. I'm just saying, I feel like I should be there by now. As people, I need some more people to subscribe. I need approximately 66 people. Well, no, hold on. I need 63 people to subscribe to the channel right now, and that will get me to 95,000. Okay, I need 63 people to subscribe to the channel. Okay. All right. I'm sorry about that, you guys. I apologize for that. I'm back. So somebody type respectability politics in the chat room. Somebody type. I had a little a surprise visit. I have ordered a guava tree. Somebody type guava tree. I've ordered a guava tree from FedEx, and it just got delivered, and so I brought it in. I'll have to show you guys when I have a lot of fruit trees And so, but anyway, back to what we were saying. Somebody type respectability politics. It does matter. Respectability does, but and respectability is not going to save you from bigotry. Okay. But disrespectability, if that's a word, can be used against you. In other words, degeneracy. A bad public image can be used to justify fear. And now, if the reasonable person standard starts becoming identity based and lived experience based, that fear can become a legal argument. And that's the part Black people need to understand. We're living in a time when every fight, every robbery, every mob, every teen takeover, every ignorant ghetto ratchet video, every public meltdown, every viral crime clip, and every reckless act can become part of how the world sees you. And when the world sees us through those images, innocent Black people are going to pay the price. Okay, now every group has its own criminals, whether we're talking about the Irish, the Italians, the Somalians, white folk, Asians, Africans, right, that embarrass them. But Black Americans are not judged as individuals the same way other groups are. One Black person acts badly on camera, millions of Black people are forced to carry that image. That's not fair, but it's real, okay? And now it may become legally dangerous. And see, this is where we are. Now, how do we go from these hardworking group of Black people, these entrepreneurs and builders that we were, to being basically, victims and beggars? How did that happen? Somebody type victims and beggars. I want you to learn something. We're going to get into this. And when I finish with this, you guys are really going to learn something, okay? There's always been ratchet hoochie ghetto chicks and ratchet dudes in the Black community, but we weren't known for that. If you look at those pictures from the 1920s and all the way back up to the 1950s, we were always well dressed. Our children had suits on. On top of that, we had intact families. And so the question is how we went from hardworking group of entrepreneurial builders to what to this degenerate behavior being so widely accepted and literally protected as the core Black identity. I'm asking because something real happened to us historically, politically, socially, economically, and culturally, and psychologically. And if we're serious, we can't be afraid to ask these hard questions about our condition. We came out of slavery with almost nothing. We built almost everything that you all see right now that is part of Black culture. We built churches, we built schools, we built HBCUs, farms, towns, businesses, banks, newspapers, mutual aid societies, professional networks, civic organizations, fraternities, sororities, along with entire communities. Our ancestors did all of that while facing open white supremacy and racial terror and lynching and land theft, and suppression, Jim Crow, economic exclusion, and just violence. And so the question is unavoidable. If our ancestors, and I think we all can agree, things are not how they were in the 1920s, are they? In 2026, as you riding down the street in your BMW with your Birkin bag, ladies, fellas, as you riding across town to see your white girlfriend, I mean, things are different. Can we just agree? Things are different. You and your biracial baby in the back seat, lady, things are different, right? Okay, it's not like it used to be. They're not stopping you at Main Street and telling you to get out of town before dark. All right. How do we become people who explain failure before we attempt to succeed? How do we become people who look first to government and political parties and activists and outsiders and corporations and celebrities or all these foreign ideological movements before we look to ourselves? How do we become a people who treat discipline as oppression and excellence as betrayal? Somebody type bougie in the chat room. Somebody type boule. You got education, you're acting white. You look at your wealthy as though they're suspicious. Family structure is optional. I don't need no man. And government dependency as justice. Well, I'm a player. Same thing. So I'm gonna give you some answers. So the first answer: how did Black builders? How do we become? What is the first question to answer, the first question is that Black Americans didn't simply stop building because we were lazy. Okay. I know they like to say that, and it reeks of racism. But after slavery ended in 1865, all the way up to the 1920s, we built all sorts of infrastructure. At one point, Black Americans had anywhere between 15 to 16 million acres of farmland, with some estimates and discussions placing the broader number closer to 18 million acres. That wasn't symbolic ownership. That was real land, real farms, real inheritance, real collateral, real family wealth, real economic independence. And to put that in perspective, 16 million acres is about 25,000 square miles, which is larger than several states. Imagine Black people own New Jersey, Massachusetts, Delaware, and Rhode Island. Okay, and that kind of land base represented power. It represented independence, and it represented a Black future that didn't require begging anyone for permission to survive. Now, listen, I want you to learn something, okay? Black success gave rise to a lot of white resentment. We're talking about the 1920s. You got a bunch of immigrants from overseas who just came over here. The country's filling up, okay? And we have to understand the psychology of that time period. Many of these poor white people, and there's still a lot of poor white people now, okay? Many poor white Americans have been brainwashed and taught and trained to believe that no matter how poor they are, they're still better than Black people. Somebody type IQ in the chat room. This is the latest iteration of it. We're better than the Blacks. They might have, big tallywhackers and nice cars, but IQ, somebody type, what is it called? Pro rata and IQ. Type that in the chat room. Pro capita and IQ. These are the latest buzzwords, okay? All right, but see, here's the thing. They still thought they were better than Black people back then. They had different words. At least I'm not an N-word. And that belief gave them this false sense of status. So when they're forced to look at successful Black people, wealthy Black people, educated Black people, Black business owners, Black landowners, Black doctors, Black lawyers, and we had them back then. Okay, one of my ancestors, George Washington Jones Sr., he was a first Black attorney, first Black county attorney in a major Kansas at Nicodemus, Kansas. Okay, but again, we were living our own American dream, and it attacked the lie that had been sold to white people. You're better than us. Okay, they're better than us, and Black success undermined that whole racial fiction that Black people were inferior. And when that lie was exposed, it created resentment, insecurity, fear, and rage, kind of like what it's doing now. And that resentment wasn't just emotional. It became economic, political, and violent. Black ownership was attacked through fraud and violence and heirs, property problems and denial of credit and tax sales, discrimination, and legal manipulation. We can look at 1921, Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was known as Black Wall Street. It was burned down after Black people who had built, one of the most successful Black business sections in districts in America. We can look at Rosewood, 1923, Rosewood, Florida. It was destroyed by a white mob on a lie. All right, we can look at 1912, Black residents were violently driven out of Forsyth County, Georgia. Okay, where more than 1,000 Black people were forced to leave. Forsyth County, Georgia is now like a white, it's like a white county outside of Atlanta. But the bottom line is, matter of fact, in that same town, later in the 1950s, land in Lake Lanier area was flooded for a reservoir, and that history is still tied to Black memory and the erasure of those Black communities around Forsyth County and Oscarville. Okay, so Black Americans' land was taken or lost through violence. They would literally put dynamite on put a bundle of sticks on your front porch, and they would basically say either get out of town or the next time it's going to be dynamite. All right, we had discriminatory courts. Remember, this was a time period you weren't allowed to testify against a white man. So it was really bad. Okay, but then you had redlining and homeowners loan corporation and later these lending practices. It marked black neighborhoods as dangerous or risky or undesirable. And so it made it very hard for black people to get loans. I mean, would you be able to get a house if you couldn't get a loan from a bank? Probably not. All right. The other thing was because the areas were considered dangerous, the property value dropped, right? And so you lost wealth. Okay. And here's another more practical problem. If you're an up and coming black person, you got to remain in the ghetto and deal with the ghetto culture and the people in the ghetto instead of being able to move up and move out and get a house somewhere else. You're forced to rent. And so now your primary source of income for most Americans, especially black Americans, is your home ownership. So now, you're forced to rent. So you don't have anything to pass down to your kids. And then you had something like urban renewal, where a lot of black neighborhoods were targeted. They put a freeway right through highway or a civic center, or a public project or some redevelopment cut right through the black neighborhood. It destroyed homes and businesses. They did it in Los Angeles. They did it in Houston. Then of course, integration, which was morally necessary, but economically complicated. Somebody type complicated. And I'm gonna give you the real story on immigration, because I really want, I don't think people have heard this before. I have a little quick video snippet I want to share with you guys so you know it's not just me saying it. All right, take a listen to this.
In fact, the majority of black people were against Brown versus Board because they were like, we don't want to integrate with white folks. We want the money, the equal opportunity that the money comes into our schools so we can raise our own kids. And so the integration was a white folks creation because they didn't want to give the money to black schools. Because black schools was producing Carter G. Woodsons. You know what I mean? They were producing the real McCoys and stuff like that. So to kill that, they came up with integration. But that's the history that, if you understood it, then you would know what's at stake, because you would know who the enemy is and how much the enemy needs to stay in power by the system that they created.
Okay. So basically, this is the real story of integration. You're going to learn something you probably didn't learn in school. And one of the best things that happened to me was that they start banning history from public schools. They don't teach black history anymore. And so what that did, it created a market for me to be able to come on the internet and teach something that I find very interesting. You can't be a good lawyer unless you actually understand history. There is the most, in my opinion, the best trial lawyer ever. His name was Jerry Spence. Somebody type Jerry Spence. He was the best trial lawyer ever. He had a ranch. I think they call it Thunder Mountain. I don't know if it's somewhere in the Four Corners. I don't know if it's Montana or whatever. I read his book, I think probably 1998. I was in my second year of law school. Jerry Spence, I still have that book. And he said, a lawyer that is not aware of history and culture and society is not really a lawyer at all. You're just, you're just a parrot, so you don't really have any context or understanding of the world and real life experiences. So I make it a point to study history and study people. One of the things I enjoy doing the most is analyzing people and listening to people. And typically, especially when you see me analyzing, I listen to people. And if you listen to people long enough, they'll tell you exactly who they are without the way they use the words, the way they speak. And, that's one of my interview tricks. I listen to you and you tell me who you are, what you want. And then I can try to figure out what I need to do to get what I need to get, or the goal I need to accomplish. But the bottom line is this, we have to remember what the fight for integration was really about. It wasn't simply black people woke up and wanted to go sit next to white folk, white children, sit and drink out the water fountain. That's not what it was about. Okay. We didn't want to sit we didn't want our little black children we didn't want to go sit next to white people. White people didn't like us, okay, back then. That's not what we wanted. The fight was over equal access to tax dollars. Somebody type tax dollars. We were already paying into the public system. Black people were paying taxes into the public coffers just as white people were, but those dollars weren't being fairly distributed and returned to the black neighborhoods or our black schools, roads, parks, libraries in our part of town, and public services. The white tax base and the black tax base were both going into the system, but the better schools, okay, which got the funding and the equipment and the buses and the athletic fields and the cleaner facilities were being directed to white schools and white communities. So in a real sense, black people were being taxed to subsidize white comfort, while our own children were being forced into inferior schools. So integration was less of a moral demand and more of a political threat. Here's what I'm trying to explain to you. See, the message from the black civil rights leaders was basically this: if you won't make separate facilities equal and give black communities our fair share of that tax money, and build our schools and pave our streets and fund our libraries and give our children equal resources, then we're going to come sit over there in your lily white schools and hop in your swimming pools. Okay, we're going to come over there and we're going to put our big, strong, strapping sons and we're going to plop them down in seats right next to your daughters. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay, right? Since you want to keep our money, okay, we're not begging. That was leverage. You see that? Again, black people played on the fact that they knew that white people wanted to stay separate. White people didn't like them. But see, here's the problem, okay? The white elites, they weren't willing to give up the money. So they called the black civil rights leaders bluff. And they forced black people to say, okay, well, fine. Y'all can come. They forced black people to fight a bunch of court battles. You know, Plessy versus Ferguson, had to get that overturned. Brown versus the Board of Education, that you know, these cases that you all have heard about, I hope you've heard about it. But see, once integration became the law, many wealthy and successful white families, they just left. They took their children out of public schools and they moved to the suburbs. They created new school districts. They enrolled their children in private school and segregation academies. Okay, and poor white people, you know, the rest of y'all. Somebody said the Mandingo threat. I'm done with you. That you will never be allowed to speak again on this broadcast. Did you say That's great. So the Mandingo threat. We're gonna put our Mandingos next to your white daughters, but the rich white folks didn't care. They said, yeah, whatever. Yeah, so that's exactly right. The Mandingo threat caused white flight. All right, so that was it. It was supposed to be a threat. They were supposed to hate us so bad they would just give us money and fund our schools, and we'd be better off. But you know, like I said, the poor white people, they couldn't afford to leave, so they were left behind in the public schools with the black children, with the Mandingo, the little mini Mandingos. You know, so much for white unity, right? But when the pressure came, you see, white wealthy people protected themselves first. They left the poor white people to absorb the consequences, okay? And that tells us something important. This wasn't only about race, it was about class, okay? And the white elite had used poor white people as foot soldiers for segregation, but when integration threatened their children and their property values and their own comfort, they abandoned poor white people and they left them there, right there in the ghetto, right? Or sent them to the trailer park or whatever. So integration opened doors, but integration also had unintended consequences. It weakened the internal black institutions. Somebody type institutions. This is very important. Somebody type black-owned businesses, black institutions, black churches, black schools, black neighborhood. It weakened internal black institutions that had been built out of necessity. It also drained black talent away from black schools and black businesses, and it allowed white elites to escape while leaving public institutions destabilized. And that tragedy is that black people were forced to fight for access to facilities our tax dollars had already helped fund. And once we finally got access, many of the people who had hoarded the best resources, they moved the goalposts. They took their children and their wealth and they left. Now, so keep that in mind. Okay, how do we get to where we are? How do we go from being well-dressed, dignified people to degeneracy? Somebody type loss of institutions. Okay, somebody type loss of institutions. Number one, loss of institutions. Okay, are y'all with me? Are y'all follow? I know it's a lot. It's a lot. This is a whole history law lesson all round rolled into one. Okay, loss of institutions. We're talking about how we became from these hardworking group of entrepreneurs to a bunch of victim-minded beggars. Everybody asked the question, right? We went from builders. They burnt all our stuff up. We got mad. We lost our institutions. They ran us off our land. We get it. All because you had a bunch of angry white people who were brainwashed to believe they're better than us. And then when they saw us doing better than them, they got mad and they had a tantrum. Okay? Greenwood, Rosewood, right? Tulsa. You got that? So now, what's the next answer? Somebody type number 2 in the chat room. Number 1, we got number 1. Number 2, all my smart people. Okay? Okay. The second answer is that we became divided from our own leadership class. Somebody type bougie. Somebody type talented 10. Somebody type Sambo. Okay, these are the names, right? This is what they call, and I know black people, we are familiar with this, but I know I have a lot of people from everywhere listening to this now. Black people ostracize people like me. Now, I don't have a criminal record. I've never been in trouble, but they will ostracize, not all black people, but commonly speaking, I garner more distrust than the local drug dealer. The weed man got all the love. The weed man, they love him. They trust him. They whatever he put in the little sack, yeah, they smoking it. It could be rat poison in there. They trust him more than they trust me. Not because I've done anything, but merely because I'm an educated black man and they perceive me to have wealth. Now that's very different from most other cultures. Most other cultures uplift their successful people and they use them as role models for their children. Not me. Okay. If I was Lil Durk, a Lil Boosie, or somebody like that, I'll be put on a pedestal. Okay. But as a lawyer or a doctor or engineer, you're automatically looked at as a boule or a sellout or something like that. I'm just telling you, how did we get here? Okay. I know somebody said, but why, Dennis? I know I'm going to get there. Just hang in there for a little while longer, baby. You're going to get the answer. You're going to get the answer. Okay. So, as I said, the second answer is that we became divided from our own leadership class. Now, every serious people needs their talented class. They need their lawyers and their doctors and their engineers and their bankers, business owners, professors, judges, accountants. They need their builders and investors and strategists and teachers and political thinkers. And a community that hates its own educated class is committing a slow suicide. And that's what you've seen happening over the past 80, 90 years. Okay. This is where we are now. I'm trying to get y'all there. Right now, how did that happen? How did we turn against that? You send your kid to college and you happy, and the next thing you know, you change, you bougie, you join Alpha Kappa Alpha, you're a Sigma now. I can't believe that. Don't join Sigma. Don't join none of y'all. Shout out to the Ice Cold Brothers, the Alpha Phi. Don't join Sigma. Don't do that. I'll talk about you. Don't know say I don't have any. I don't know any Sigmas. No five, none of y'all. You Phi Beta. I'm just messing with you. Anyway, shout out to the Blue Fives. But anyway, what I'm saying is inside Black America, we developed this deep suspicion of our own successful people. And some of that suspicion comes from real arrogance among elites. Now, I just so happen to be do I still have Mandingo threat up there? Damn it. Move that out the way. But anyway, and by the way, that's my office now. I got a toll-free number for you all to call me toll-free, 866-LAW-BIG. Y'all type 866-LAW-BIG in the chat room. 866-LAWBIGG. That is for you all to call me if you've been in a car accident anywhere around America. Okay. 866-LAW-BIG. Okay. And if you're a young lawyer and you want to learn how to practice law the right way, you want to learn how to practice personal injury law, give me a call. I'm gonna start training young lawyers how to do what I do. Okay. You can reach me at 866 Law Big. I'm gonna teach you from the ground up. All right. Because I'm getting old. All right. And I want to try to make sure we spread the love around. But anyway, if you've been in a car accident or you're a young lawyer, you want to learn, you got to have a law license. Okay. A legitimate one. I don't want anybody fresh out of the penitentiary. Yeah, man, I wrote all the briefs for everybody in my cell block. You don't call me. Don't you call me. I don't want no jailhouse lawyers calling me. But if you a young lawyer between 1 in 3 years of practicing law, you can hit me up at 866-LAW-BIG. And that also goes for anybody who wants to learn how to practice law the right way. We're going to start off with how you should create a rapport with your clients and return all the phone calls. I'm the lawyer. I will bother the hell out of you. I bother the hell out of my clients. I return all phone calls. I call your cell phone 9 o'clock at night. What you doing? You call me, I'll call you back. That's how you get them off. You call me, I'm gonna call you. Call me a bunch of times if you want to. I'm gonna send you an email, text message. I'm gonna follow you on Instagram and make sure you hear from me. But anyway, so let's go back to what we're talking about. Suspicion of our successful, right? And I will agree, you got some arrogant people. They get a little degree and they get snooty. Okay, but some educated and successful people, they just detach themselves from the masses. They start living their own version of the American dream. They abandon poor and working class Black people. And so between 1880 and 1920, okay, Black America was not one class of people living in one experience. Matter of fact, I'm gonna say all the way to 1960. In the South, many Black people were poor sharecroppers. They were tenant farmers. They were laborers. They were trying to survive a horrible racial violence and economic exploitation. And at the same time, you had these very successful Black enclaves in places like Detroit, New York, and Los Angeles, right? And Black owners and Black business owners, Black professionals, Black churches. It was blacked out, man. Okay, and Black business districts across America from 1910 to 1970, approximately 6 million. But see, here's the thing. From 1910 to 1970, about 6 million Black people left the South and headed to the North and the Midwest and all these Western cities to get out of the persecution they were dealing with in the South and to look for better education for themselves and their children and safety. Okay. And that migration created a real class and cultural tension because some of these poor Southern Black migrants who arrived in cities like New York and Chicago and Detroit, somebody type country, and Cleveland and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, they were not polished, okay? They were country as a brown egg. They were uneducated. They didn't have any money. They had no social training. It was loud and unabashed. And then you had this established middle class, and they was like, oh, hell no. You guys remember this movie, Malcolm X, Spike Lee did way back in the day, 95. Most of y'all wasn't even born. This is a movie called Malcolm X. Denzel Washington is the star. And this is the kind of contrast. Malcolm Little, he came from, basically, he was from Detroit, but they called him Detroit Red. He had that little hillbilly zoot suit on. And he came into a more sophisticated Harlem world, And historically, Malcolm moved into Harlem in like 1943 after the early migration wave had already shaped, Black urban life. And so, he was looking country. And you see how they treated him. Many of the elites were arrogant, but many of the poor Black people were jealous too, okay? They were resentful, they were undisciplined, and they were hostile towards successful Black people, just like they are right now. Somebody type Sambo in the chat room. Somebody type boule, bougie, type all those words. Uncle Tom, right? Tools of white power. And they were jealous because you got money, right? So you must have sold out, right? And so why would you want to stay around people like that who rejected you if you're a successful Black person? Why would you want to do anything for them, right? And so if you have the means to leave people who insult your success and treat your achievement like betrayal, they left. They went to places like Snob Hill in New York. And that's not always abandonment. Sometimes it's self-preservation. I can't move back to South Central LA. I'm not gonna do it. Okay. And see, the thing is, we have to stop always vilifying successful Black people and acting like poor Black people are always innocent victims. Some people are victims of the system, but some people are products of poor choices and weak discipline and bad values and destructive behavior. And when a community attacks its own successful people, it creates a brain drain. And the educated, wealthy, and the talented leave, and then the same community complains that nobody came back to help. Now, that is one aspect of it. You always gonna have tension between the have and the have-nots, okay? Now, we're gonna dig a little deeper, and I'm gonna piss you off. I'm gonna tell you now. I'm about to make you have to look at some of your black heroes. Okay, type all your black heroes in the chat room. All your black heroes. Who are your black heroes? Type their names in the chat room. All the white people. List all the black people that you heard about on when you were taking those black history classes. White people only. This is for you. Interactive, white people only. List all of the black people that you heard about. Okay, I want you to put all of them in the chat room. Martin Luther King. Come on. Let's get them in there. Let's get W.B. Du Bois. Come on. Let's get them on in there. Let's get the rest of them in there. Let's take a look at them. We need to look at them. Okay, we need to see part of the distrust between successful upper class black people and poor black people was made worse by a conflict between Jamaican immigrant Marcus Garvey and foundational black American talented 10th. And when I say foundational black American, I'm talking about the black Americans that can trace their root. They've been here. Somebody type been here. Okay, so you got a Jamaican immigrant named Marcus Garvey. Okay, and you got the talented 10th who are black Americans. Marcus Garvey came to the United States in 1916. Somebody type 1916 in the chat room. He came to Harlem, and it was at the beginning of what's called the New Negro period. And now y'all better watch how you spell that. The New Negro, you better be mindful of how you spell Negro. If you spell Negro in the chat room, okay, it means black in Spanish. But bottom line is, the New Negro period was a black cultural and political and intellectual awakening in the 1910s and the 1920s, and it was centered around Harlem. It's closely related to the Harlem Renaissance. Now, within that year, Garvey got here in 1916. Within a year, he started collecting donations and investors. He must have had a crisp mouthpiece to get people to give him money. Nevertheless, he organized what was called the New York branch of the UNIA, and that's the United Negro Improvement Association. I read that book probably 20 years ago but by 1917, he launched what was called the Black Star Line in 1990. This man been here 3 years. Okay, 3 years. He fresh off the boat from Jamaica. In 3 years, he balling, right? But then it all collapsed in 1922. Somebody say, what happened? Somebody, what happened? Okay, so from 1916 to 1922, that's only 6 years. Garvey got exposed as a con man and convicted of mail fraud in 1923. Come on. All right, he went to jail. He went to prison in 1925. He was deported back to Jamaica in 1927. Okay. Now, Marcus, I'm gonna give you some details. I know this is unpopular. I'm just saying, I'm not gonna lie to you. I know you love your heroes, but I'm not gonna lie to you. This is what the record says. And I know y'all love Marcus Garvey, back to Africa. I get it. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, you can Google this, you can look it up, look at the case yourself. Marcus Garvey's mail fraud conviction came from how the Black Star Line sold stock through the mail. And the basic charge was that Garvey and the Black Star Line officials used mail promotional materials to solicit investments while making false claims about the company's ships and operations. No, you saying you're doing something you're not. And the key example was promotional a circular showing a ship called the Phyllis Wheatley, which implied that the Black Star Line owned or controlled it. Didn't own it, didn't control it. When in reality, the company didn't own the ship. It was reportedly trying to buy the ship. Somebody typed trying to. Ladies, have you ever had a man talk about he trying to get a job? I'm trying to be a rapper. I'm trying to get in the league. Have you ever, you know how annoying trying to is? Well, if you trying to buy a boat, if you have a job and you trying to have a job, telling somebody you have that job that you're trying to get is a lie. And in the law, they call it fraud. Okay. So he fraudulently represented that he owned this boat called the Phyllis Wheatley, right? And he was sending out newsletters and flyers saying, hey, send us some money so we can get this, pay for this boat, man. We're going down to the Bahamas. But anyway, he reportedly was trying to buy the ship. okay, that he planned to rename the Phyllis Wheatley because it wasn't renamed the Phyllis Wheatley. And the feds called him. The feds said that's fraud here in America because ordinary black investors were being asked to buy stock based on the false impression that the company already owned the boat, okay? And the broader problem was that Garvey was selling a dream of black-owned shipping and global commerce, and eventually African repatriation. No, we going back to Africa, while the company was financially unstable, badly managed, and lost a whole bunch of money. Now, what year did he get here? Y'all, I want y'all to somebody type big game in the chat room. He got here in 1916. He started the UNAI in 1917. By 1919, he was taking in donations. That's 3 years. That's 3 years. Okay? Now, in that 3-year time period, this man was able to collect $600,000. Somebody type 600,000. Okay? 600,000. Lost it all. Now, I want to put that in perspective for you. $600,000 in 1922 was considerably more than it is right now. 600,000 in 1922 was somewhere between 11 and 12 million dollars. You understand me? So in 3 years, this Jamaican immigrant, Marcus Garvey, collected $12 million from black folks. That's an enormous amount from black workers and small investors. And so we had money. Now, his defenders argued that the prosecution was politically motivated and that J. Edgar Hoover targeted him because he was so powerful, not because he was a con man. They got at him because he was a black national. Okay, right. They convicted him because he lied about this black law. Look at the case yourself. You don't have to like me. Then it's being anti-black. I'm just telling you what the case said. What you want to get mad at me for? The man was able to hoodwink, bamboozle, and lead astray. Millions of black people, got 12 million and got deported, okay? He didn't even own the boat that he had on the brochure. Have you ever showed up to the club thinking you was about to see Usher, Luther Vandross, and it's some local rapper, and yeah, Luther Vandross ain't gonna make it tonight. You done got your girl. I'm just saying, okay? And guess what? Black people was misrepresented and left holding the bag. In other words, I want you to put this in perspective. Marcus Garvey, who we still talk about today as this black American hero, his rise in the United States was fast, okay? And when I say fast, I mean fast as hell. He caused all this chaos and destruction in 6 years, okay? And in barely a decade, he went from a foreign-born Jamaican organizer who nobody knew to trying to build a mass black nationalist movement in America amongst Americans to getting deported, okay, who lost millions of dollars and was forced out the country. Now, the Talented 10th, again, they were largely foundational black Americans. They came out of the black American experience. These are our ancestors: slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, land ownership, HBCU, churches, newspapers, law offices, schools, civic organizations, domestic institutions. They weren't interested in trying to do nothing global on some global African diaspora. Their fight was right here in America because our people had been made in America. And their argument wasn't that America was fair. We knew that because remember, we just been dealing with all the racism, the lynchings, and did y'all just hear the first hour and a half that they knew what was up. They weren't stupid, okay? They knew exactly what was going on. They weren't saying that America was fair. They were saying that we've already built all this infrastructure. Somebody type infrastructure in the chat room. We built all these institutions. We're not going to just abandon that and just let the white folk have it and go back to Africa with you, sir. We got churches, we have colleges, we have businesses, we got farms, we got towns, we got black professionals. You got to leave your nursing job to go to Africa. You want to leave Detroit to go to Africa and be a nurse in Ghana somewhere, or Liberia? No, you don't. They probably don't even want your license over there. You know how hard it is to get your license transformed from state to state? And now you got to get a new nurse's license. You just got your CN. You just got it. Your RN. You just got that. Okay. And now you got to try to go to Sierra Leone and get you and wait in that line, and it's hot over there to get re-registered. No, they was not like, no, we ain't going. And so Garvey's global plan, this Pan-African vision, and this Back to Africa program was seen as politically and emotionally reckless. Now, again, the working class, poor black people liked him. All right. They like the pride. They like the racial confidence this short black Jamaican had, right? The global identity. Yeah, it's bigger than us. We bigger than us, right? They like the sense of mass power, and they liked him. Remember, these country folk coming up out the South, right? They liked him. You see what I'm saying? These snooty black people trying to tell us to wear suits and eat with our mouths closed, and this little loudmouth Jamaican dude with the pompadour on his head, we liked him. Okay, that part is true. We shouldn't erase that. He was charismatic, like most Jamaicans. Shout out to the yard man, very Jamaican. Come up here, just very charismatic. Got it. Okay. But see, the other part of the story is that Garvey played on black Americans' low self-esteem and emotional need to be wanted and loved. He had good game. He needed more than poor workers and emotional followers, though. If he was going to build his African dream, he needed the black professional class, that same group of talented tenths, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the engineers, the business owners, the bankers, the organizers, the administrators, the farmers, the trained institution builders to come on along with him. He needed that talented tenth, and they rejected him and his goofy plan. They probably knew he was stealing money in the first place, right? We are not going to help you build a nation in Africa, sir. We're going to stay right here. They thought the idea was bad. They thought it was unrealistic. And see, they already knew about this Liberian. Who knows about what black people did when we went back to Liberia, which wasn't even Liberia. We went back to Africa. Did y'all know about that? We went to Africa in the 1820s and enslaved the Africans. Did y'all know we did that? We went back to Africa. White folk gave us tools and money, and we went to Africa in 1820s. These and enslaved the Africans. Damn, did y'all know that? I want you to look up Liberia right now. They just got us up out of there in 1986. Did y'all know we went to Africa and enslaved Africans? That's hard to listen to, huh? We supposed to be victims. I know. Praise God. Somebody type praise Moses in the chat room. We went to Africa. The white folks said, look, we're going to put y'all on a boat, and we're going to carve out a piece of land, and we're going you can call it, what do you want to call it? Come, Tom, what do you want to go? Liberia. There you go. That's a great name, Liberty. Okay, so we'll send you over there. You can come up with your constitution. The Liberian constitution looked just like the American constitution. We went over there. We dressed and had our own stuff, guns, everything. And there was already some Africans there, little local Africans, they over there, over there doing their thing. We came back. Oh my God. Mind you, we just came from America. It's 1820. We going through hell over here. We went over there. We separated ourselves for them, had them working for us. And by the time, I think it was 1940, we had enslaved them on a rubber plantation. We had them out there doing slave work. Get out there. This is what we did. Shameful. This is what we do. We damn slave owners. That's what foundational black America. I'm just saying, it's the truth. Okay, so I'm just saying. But the bottom line is, it was a failed experiment. And Garvey was trying to take his boat over there to Liberia. He was trying to go to Liberia. It's 100 years later. And he said, yeah, we're going to buy some land from Liberia. And the Liberian said, nah, we ain't going to sell you the land. And they end up selling it to this rubber company. So he didn't get the boat. He didn't get the land. All right. It hit it all. And it just wasn't going to work out. And the ruling caste was like, nah, man, we ain't fooling with you, dog. They already got people over there. They got conflicts on the land because they were fighting too. Right. And, that earlier colonization and repatriation effort to Africa had already shown that moving black Americans out of the United States, it wasn't simple. You're going to have to deal with disease, problems, cultural conflicts. You got these political struggles, and you got these land disputes and these and just interference from the colonies. So from the perspective of the talented 10th, Garvey was asking Black America to risk everything and had no guarantees of success. And this is why many of them saw Garvey as a scamming con man hustler. And to the talented 10th, it looked like money he got out of the Black people in America that could have been used to strengthen our own infrastructure inside America. And the real source of the fight, Garvey wasn't just calmly disagreeing with the talented 10th. He got loud. He was angry because they wouldn't come along with him. He needed that Black professional class and to validate his movement and fund his movement and staff his movement and help fund his African vision. And when he rejected the plan, he lashed out and he began attacking the Black professional class as sellouts, race traders, elitists, social climbers, and tools of white power. You understand what I'm saying? This man took what he had something called the Negro World, which is basically, I guess, a publication, a newspaper, and his mass platform to turn working class people, you know, them Black people that just came up from the South, that was tired of these bougie Black people telling them what to do and how to act. Okay, the same group, right? Garvey had them, and he was saying, "See, I told you, they think they're better than us. They're bougie, they're boule. Look at these fraternities and sororities they're in." So instead of treating the disagreement as a serious strategic debate over where Black Americans should build power, he made it personal. In fact, he even made it racial and class-based and emotional. See, Garvey, first of all, understand that Garvey is from Jamaica. So his African world, his worldview was already different than Black America. He came up here anyway. So him going from Jamaica to America to Africa was just another move to another country. Black Americans had been there. We hadn't gone anywhere. Okay. So, but bottom line is, you know, he also he leaned on the color division because a lot of the lights, he made it a light skin, dark skin issue, right? It was already present in Black life, but Garvey weaponized it. In other words, it was already issues between Black people, successful Black people, and poor Black people, or working class Black people, light skin, dark. But Garvey came through and made it work. This is the effect. This is why we still talk about this man. Okay, and we, you know, time has kind of washed it clean a little bit, but Garvey was not helpful to Black life. Garvey weaponized the color line, politically. And that kind of color conflict had deep roots in Caribbean societies, including places like Jamaica, where skin shade and class and education and status and colonial hierarchy were tied together in very powerful ways. And Garvey used that resentment against leaders like W.B. Du Bois and other members of the Black elite, portraying them as color-struck, light-skinned, upper-class Negroes who look down on dark and poor Black people, you know, the ones fresh out the South specifically. And that tactic worked because it connected class resentment, color resentment, working class frustration, but it also poisoned Black politics by teaching many regular Black people to view educated Black people and leadership as racially suspicious rather than strategically necessary. Do y'all hear where this comes? Do you see what I'm saying? Are y'all learning something? You see how it's all started to come? Our institutions got wiped out. Okay. Institutions got wiped out. We don't like the successful people who recognize the game and how to do things in America. Okay. What are we missing? Right? Okay. Now here's the thing, and I'm gonna kind of finish that up, and we're gonna move on to the next one. So, you know, the talented 10th said, nah, we not gonna let this dude do this. They didn't have a term like tether back then, but they had some words for him. But so this is the thing. They had this thing called the 8 at the top controversy, and this deepened the split. So in 1923, okay, keep in mind, this man had already been indicted, right? They'd already found out he took this $600,000 / $12 million from these Black folks. It ain't no boat, okay? So in 1923, you had about 8 prominent Black leaders, including people who were involved in the NAACP and other professional class. They contacted the federal government. They say, look, man, You know, they contacted J. Edgar Hoover himself. They said, look, we need y'all to get Garvey up out of here. We want him deported back to Jamaica. That's what they literally did. Okay? That's what they literally did. Garvey used that as proof that the talented chants were agents. Somebody type agent in the chat room. Agents of the government and enemies of black liberation. This man has been in the country for 6 years. He got here in 1916, and he already causing all this trouble. Okay? But see, the truth is, those black Americans, those black educated Americans are trying to protect the naive, uneducated black masses from this emotional, manipulative, foreign-born con man who had already took $600,000, which was $12 million. This man was a con man, and they could see it. This African-centered dream was just a scam for him. You know, and they didn't want to abandon the house that black Americans had built. When they refused to do that, he started calling them names: class, color, resentment, to turn the masses on them. And that's one of the reasons black Americans later developed such a destructive habit by calling successful black people house N-words and agents and boule and sellouts and agents and tools of white power. And it didn't help that many of them were involved in certain fraternities and sororities. He threw that in there too. And some of that language came from real historical fight, but that fight left behind a dangerous legacy. A people who needed its talented class was taught to hate it. So they take their skills to places where they're respected. They go to corporations and white law firms and hospitals, universities, government office, and other professional spaces outside the community. And then the community complains that the talented people abandon them. But this creates a cycle. You successful people, they get treated bad, they leave because they're rejected. And the people left behind become resentful because they feel abandoned. And then everybody blames everybody else, and the result is leadership poverty. And then you get a bunch of hustlers and scammers in charge. Okay? And that's how builders became beggars. When people chase away the very people who know how to build, what's left? So when the black community calls every successful person a sellout, agent, gatekeeper, boule, Sambo, house Negro, or some tool of white supremacy, that's the tethered legacy of that Jamaican con man, Marcus Garvey. I want y'all to remember that. And I just want you to think about the arrogance of Marcus Garvey. This man is a Jamaican immigrant who moved to America in 1916. And within a year, he was trying to challenge the established black American leadership that largely made up a foundation of black Americans who had already built this country. The churches, the schools, the HBCUs, they were professors, they were teachers, they were scholars, they were business owners, they were newspaper, they were lawyers. And he trying to come tell us what to do. We already had our professional, and this dude fresh out of Jamaica, right? Fresh out of Kingston, trying to tell them what to do. And that is an extraordinary thing. When you think about it, I want you to think about that. You got this Marcus Garvey immigrated to America, uninvited, basically invaded the Black American world. He didn't build anything, benefited from the space, and those Black Americans had already created, and used Black American masses as an organized base. Snatched up basically $12 million, i.e. 600,000, but 12 million in modern day, from working class black people, then acted as if he understood what we needed, what was better for us than what we knew was better for us. You understand what I'm saying? That I want you to think about that. That's not confidence, that's arrogance. Okay? But see, this is the part of the tension that many foundational black Americans feel towards even modern immigrants. It's that arrogance. Don't come up here telling black folk what to do here already. You see, it's not hatred, it's not jealousy, it's a historical irritation with a pattern. You come into Black America, where foundational Black Americans have already fought and bled and died and stewed and marched and built and voted and integrated and desegregated and litigated and created a space. You benefit from the doors we open. You use civil rights infrastructure our ancestors paid for, the schools, the neighborhoods, the political protections, the social employment access where we created through struggle. And then after arriving here, you turn around and act like you understand America better than we do. You understand what I'm saying? You act as though we're backwards and we're lazy and we're emotional and unstrategic or inferior because we don't see America the way you see it, and that's arrogance. And here's the thing, you don't move places like Utah and Montana where there ain't no black people. You move to Houston, Atlanta, DC. These are the places you move to. So you come and move within black. If you want to show us how much you know, move to Utah and go build a black town in Utah, okay? But they don't do that, all right? And look, many immigrants come from the country where, and not all these immigrants are bad people. I'm not saying that. Not all black immigrants are tethers or should be disrespected. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, when we look at Marcus Garvey, he's a prime example of a disruptor and a troublemaker from another country with another perspective. All skin folk ain't kinfolk, okay? Many black immigrants come from countries where they dominate populations, where the dominant population looks like them. So they have a different perspective. They come from places where black people are the majority, where black people are presidents and prime ministers and police chiefs and teachers and judges and landowners and business owners, and that produces a different kind of racial psychology. They may not have been raised inside the specific American caste system that trained white people to treat black success as a threat and train black people to navigate within white institutions very carefully. So when you get this hot stepper, okay, so when these immigrants come through here, black immigrants, they got, they think black Americans are too cautious or angry or too racial or too attached to history or too focused on slavery or Jim Crow. But that's because they're looking at America with an immigrant gaze, not with a foundational black American memory. And that's why it's important for us to distinguish ourselves so folk don't get it confused. Okay? So now, are y'all still with me? I'm getting there. All right, we're gonna get y'all out of here on time. I know y'all don't have nothing to do. That's why you listening to me. But I hope I know this is long, but just bear with me. We're almost there. Okay. Now, the third answer. All right. So our institutions were destroyed, left us in a hopeless state. We began to separate ourselves and ostracize ourselves from the builders and the talented people. And so the third answer, okay, because that's 1 and 2. The third answer is ideological. We developed a political language that often explains everything in terms of systems, oppression, racism, capitalism, imperialism, and structural control. Now, let me be clear. Systems and structural inequality are real, okay? And black Americans didn't need, foreigners coming in here from places like Russia and China and communism or socialism to teach us that racism was systematic. We knew the system was real because we lived under it. But over time, our critique of systems became something else. It became a theology of helplessness. It became a belief that every problem is caused by someone else, and every failure is predetermined, and every success is an exception, and every standard is oppression, and every criticism is betrayal, and every discipline is respectability politics, and every demand for responsibility is victim blaming. And every successful black person must have sold out. But see, that's not how analysis works. That's fatalism. And there's a difference between understanding oppression and worshiping oppression. There's a difference between studying systems and using systems as an excuse for permanent failure. There's a difference between saying the system has barriers and saying because the system has barriers, we don't have to build or marry or parent or study or work or invest or discipline ourselves or govern our conduct. That's where we went wrong. We allow legitimate structural critique to become structural fatalism. And once that happened, black people stopped asking, what can we build for ourselves? And start asking, who owes us something? We stopped asking, what must we do for ourselves? And start asking, how can we blame our situation on somebody else? Or who can we blame it on? We stop asking, how do we organize our collective power? And start saying, who's going to rescue us? You see? Let me say this, man, and I'm gonna say this. Poor people can still have dignity and discipline and ambition. Okay? We can still do that. All right, but that mindset I mentioned is victim begging. It's simply it's not simply poverty. Again, poor people can still have dignity and discipline and ambition. But hell, for most of our history in this country, Black folks have been poor. But we never conducted ourselves in the degenerate manner that we see so often in 2026, like in those videos I showed earlier. The image that's being portrayed across the world. Today, we have more wealth and opportunity and access and educational and political power than any other group of Black people on the planet. Okay? So poverty alone can't explain this. It isn't simply suffering. Suffering people can still build, can't they? Because we built. But victim begging is a political and cultural posture where people lead with grievance and demand and rescue and reject the responsibility and distrust excellence and treat dependency as justice. That's the mindset we're dealing with in the Black community today. And when you have a group of people with education and money, but without dignity, they fall into degeneration. You understand? Without discipline, there's no structure. Without ambition, every obstacle, whether it's real or imagined, becomes another excuse to say, who can I blame? You understand? Now, how do we get there? Right? See, that comes with the fourth answer. And that's Black politics was reframed by ideologies that weren't ours. They weren't rooted in foundational Black American interests or our experience. But to understand why, you have to understand socialism, communism, Marxism, labor radicalism, and anti-colonialism, and revolutionary politics, and how that became attractive to Black leaders. Because we got to remember, in the 1920s, remember what I said was going on in the 1920s? We had just come out of that Jim Crow. It was horrible. Black people being persecuted. And, Black leaders were trying to find answers. This is the backdrop. This is 1920s. We had built up all this stuff and they ran us out the South. Huh? Remember that? All right, we're talking about a period after Reconstruction, lynching. Every week they had postcards of lynchings being mailed all around, and chain gangs and white mobs and riots and terrorists acting a fool, like Red Summer, Tulsa, all that stuff. So Black America was at a breaking point, and Black people had tried to do it the so-called right way. We had land, we had churches, we had buildings, we worked, we saved, we bought land, we built towns. We opened businesses, we built churches and schools and produced teachers and lawyers and preachers and newspapers and editors and business owners. And after all that, right, jealous white folk who've been trained that they're supposed to be better than us, somebody type IQ in the chat room, right? They got jealous and burned it down, ran us off the land, stole the land, through property fraud. Somehow they burned down the courthouse so there wouldn't be any records of who owned the land. Okay? Denied us credit, used violence to force us out. Nothing we could do about it. Use the legal system. Nothing we could do. Got treated like second-class citizens. And that's the climate that produced a need for better answers. Somebody type better answers in the chat room. Better answers to the question of what do we do now? Because that's the question we asked when we got out of slavery. We're free. 1865. What do we do now? We build. Okay. Now here we are. It's 1920. We did the building and they tore it down. We still dealing with this stuff. What do we do now? And see, that's when people were vulnerable. They were vulnerable and they made this radical turn. And this was done out of desperation. Okay. Again, between 1880 and 1920s, poor Black folk began leaving the South. They escaped the racial terror and economic starvation, and our people were looking for answers because everything we had built was under attack. Black leaders based in New York and other urban centers, including W.B. Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph and Chandler Owen and James Weldon, Cyril Briggs, all these people connected to the NAACP. You had the Crusader, Harlem Circles. You had all these labor politics, these black nationalists. They were trying to explain what happened and what black people should do next. Somebody typed what to do next. And they were watching black Americans get lynched and dispossessed and segregated and underpaid and over-policed and legally humiliated while America was still claiming to be a democracy. And that's why socialism sounded like an answer to some people. Okay? So I know you all don't know, y'all don't believe me, but that's okay. I don't care if you don't believe me. I'm going to share some videos with you because there are other people who've come to this same conclusion. And I want you all to see it for yourself. You guys, if you have not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I know this is a long, boring broadcast, but these are the type of broadcasts I like to give. I just want each and every one of y'all to know that I don't like all that excitement that I've been receiving around here lately. This is the type of stuff I like. But let's go ahead and look at some videos, and we'll just hear it out. Okay, you guys tell me if I'm wrong or not. All right. Let's start off with this one right here.
Especially for most black people, but we've never. It's the predominant mindset, especially for most black people, but we've never questioned where that idea came from, who gave it to us, and why it was given to us. This was published in 1933. Now, the highly educated Negroes who have studied economics at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Chicago will say that the Negro cannot succeed in business because their professors who have never had a moment's experience in this sphere have written accordingly. The impatient, highly educated Negroes therefore say that since under the present system of capitalism, the Negro has no chance to toil upward in this economic sphere, the only hope for bettering his condition in this respect is through socialism, the overthrow of the present economic regime. This thought is...
Now, he's referring to the miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. Now, at this point, it's 1933. So you have the black elite who now a couple of generations of educated black people have come to the determination that socialism is the answer. They've been brainwashed. Meanwhile, you got poor black people who are doing their thing. All right, somebody type, they are out there. They're selling watermelon and fried chicken. Somebody type watermelon and fried chicken, and they are making bank. Do you hear me? They're making real money. I know. Y'all like, oh my God, why would you say that? Yeah, I know what I'm saying. It sounds very racist until you understand the history of watermelon and fried chicken. But bottom line is you got you literally have black people who are out there making money, and you got black elite who are telling them, oh, you can't do this. And they're like, oh, yes, we can. We're doing it right now. And I know that sounds pretty racist, right? He said watermelon and fried. I know I said it. And I'm going to say it again. I want you all to, let's see if we can get this up here for you guys. I'm going to see if I can actually pull this up for you guys. I want to, listen to this, okay? Somebody type watermelon felon in the chat room.
Watermelon farms in the United States. Fun fact that after the Civil War, black people used watermelon as a cash crop to try to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And then white people who were angry at them for making money made fun of them and dehumanized them by making watermelon be a silly thing to eat. And they used federal institutions like the USDA to systematically steal land from black people until they no longer could watermelon farm. And then they continue to this day to stereotype black people and make them feel like shit for eating watermelon. Fried chicken, too. After the Civil War, black people tried to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and mostly black women, as a way to make money. And then white people made fun of them and dehumanized.
So basically what you're seeing is that black people were being entrepreneurs right out of slavery. they were making money. They were able to use that money to buy farms, to buy land, to buy tools. And this is how we were getting on our feet. So meanwhile, you have the elite in New York City saying, oh no, capitalism is not working. And you got some poor dirt farmer in Mississippi making money and feeding his family, her family, selling watermelon and fried chicken. Now, of course, again, I explained to you all earlier that a lot of white people were jealous as hell when they started seeing black people be successful, because like we've been brainwashed to believe that we're better than blacks no matter what. And now here they are making money and being successful, and they're not supposed to be able to do that. And that really upset them. That really upset their perception of how things are supposed to be. That really, it does now to some people. And that's unfortunate, but the Bible says you shouldn't covet thy neighbor's things, and that's why you shouldn't do it. But it was a lot of jealousy involved. So instead of saying, hey, good job for you, they start vilifying watermelon and fried chicken, and then they end up selling fried chicken and watermelon. Shout out to Colonel Sanders.
Them and delegitimize them for eating food with their hands like barbarians. And then two white people opened up this restaurant called the Coon Chicken Inn with this big red-lipped black caricature as the door to the restaurant. And it was pretty successful in Portland, Oregon. And then in 1930, a white man, Colonel Sanders, franchised chicken and became the face of fried chicken across the world. And to this day, I will not eat fried chicken in public for fear of being judged. Something I'm trying to deconstruct, but the damage is done. I don't really know what I want you guys to do with this information. Yeah, this isn't even a microphone. This is a key fob.
Well, again, like I said, so let's go back to this book, and this is a famous book many of you
among Negroes in this country, and is rapidly.
It's called The Miseducation of the Negro. So basically, he's saying the rich, the quote unquote educated elite are telling these poor people, these poor black people, capitalism is bad for you. And they like, nah, it's actually working out pretty good for us, actually. He said, no, it's bad for you because they've been brainwashed with socialism and Marxism.
Sweeping them into the ranks of what are commonly known as communists. The uneducated Negro businessman, however, is actually at work doing the very thing which the miseducated Negro has been taught to believe cannot be done. If the highly educated Negro would forget most of his untried theories taught him in school, if he could see through the propaganda which has been instilled in his mind under the pretext of education. So what the father of black history is saying is that the belief that you can't succeed in America because of the white power structure and that you need to overthrow capitalism in order to succeed is propaganda disguised as education. Who else did I say wanted to reach us with propaganda disguised as education? In order that the Negro may be reached with education and propaganda, and that he may be organized for activity, the following methods are recommended. Who do you think wanted to do this? All the way back in 1922, Soviet communists. People that look like this, actually. As you can see, it was the communists that wanted to do this the entire time.
So what he's pointing out is that you have outside influences who are now exacerbating the racial divide in America. Basically, you have agents from our former enemies and competitors, some would say current enemies, who say, hey, you know what? We can create destabilization in the United States by infuriating Americans. We can create dissension, and what's bad for them is good for us. And so it's not just black people who are trying to sell other educated black people who are trying to sell other black people on this socialism idea, but you have foreign outside agitators who are coming in saying, yeah, we'll come study at our school in Moscow, and they help them get the language. And this is your problem. You need to inherit, so you need to be communist. So I'm just saying, this is how we got here. And I know y'all like, well, what are you talking about? Just hang in there for a minute. Just keep listening. It's bigger than us.
It was their goal to reach us with education and propaganda so that we can be used for their purpose. The question is, did it work?
All right. So let's look at another. Are y'all still with me? Let me know if you're still with me. I need you to know. I know this is some straight out of left field type stuff, but it is what it is. Let's keep listening.
Black people hate black conservatives. And let me explain to you guys what I mean. You guys, for some reason, we live in a generation of black people who are oddly militarized and aggressive towards any race or people that disagree with their notion of them being so racially oppressed. And the people that...
All right, racially oppressed. You hear this language? This is the language that black people have been brainwashed to believe, oppressed. All right, now I'm gonna be honest with you. My grandmother was born in 1915. And she told me some stories about what oppression was really like. In 2026, as I ride around in my German engineered vehicle, right? I don't feel the oppression that she did. But yet and still, we as black people, we are now one of the richest groups of African people of African descent on this planet. And we're still talking about oppressed. And I'm not going to pee on your coke. Of course, we're oppressed. You know, I get it. I get it. I don't want to make you mad at me because y'all been mad at me for about 2 weeks. But the bottom line is if we took a group of black people from 1915 and brought them and dropped them off in 2026, they would call this heaven. So the question is, why are we still utilizing that? Why is that language why has that become part of the culture? I'm just asking questions, okay? I'm just asking questions. That's all I do is ask questions. But I'm gonna let these young people, because these young people are on it. I never heard this stuff in rap songs in the 1980s. We was talking about shooting and smoking weed back then, but these young people are on it. I want you to listen to these young people.
That black people hate the most are black conservatives or other black people who refuse to give into the notion that we are racially oppressed in today's modern era. And so the next question becomes, why do black people get so upset when you disagree with them about the current states of how the nation is perceiving African Americans? And now it just boils down to three things. It boils down to tribalism, ignorance, and years of conditioning from socialists, Marxists, and black activists to make black people think that they are victims. And then on more of the black activist thing, you guys, like we were taught in high school that Martin...
See, the thing is they have to keep teaching those notions or otherwise they become irrelevant. You know what it's like? It's like being a blacksmith in 20. No, it's like being a horse and buggy driver once the Model T Ford came out. You pretty much got obsolete. So now you have to start preaching that, oh no, that those cars are they're unreliable. They're gonna break down. Get you a horse, okay? And so that's what's going on. They have to continue making their PhDs and the information they learned 40 or 50 years ago relevant and writing books. So or otherwise it messes with their, so they kind of people, you know, things in motion kind of want to stay in motion, inertia. Let's keep listening to this young brother.
Luther King, Rosa Parks, all these other black, Al Sharpton, all these other guys, these people were the pinnacle of what black people are today. Come to find out, Martin Luther King is one of the main reasons why welfare and abortions are such a huge problem within the black community today. Come to find out that the whole Rosa Parks debacle was more about getting a lawsuit rather it was fighting for African-American rights to sit in public transit. And pretty much Al Sharpton was the P. Diddy of fucking civil rights activists. And here's the thing, right? The good part of the 40s, 50s, and all the way up to now, these same activists have been brainwashing black people to think that they are either less than, owed to, or the only reason why they don't have a good footing in today's society is because of white people. And now...
All right, again, remember when they began to pick up these socialist notions, remember the environment that we were living in the 1920s. These leaders from the 1920s were trying to come up with answers. They taught the next generation taught that generation, the next generation taught that generation. So now we're 5 generations in. Oh, the answer is we need to bring socialism and communism. That's where we are. I want you guys to understand that. Okay. And so this is just, it's a straight line back to W.B. Du Bois and all those communists, straight to where we are right now in 2026 in your African studies class. All right, now we're going to move on to the next one because there's a lot of people who are saying the same thing. And I like it. I like the fact that you got all these folk saying these things. I think it's pretty cool. Let's look at some more. Okay.
Liberals may be diverse ideologically, but they are each aspiring towards the same form of government, and that makes them their own nation already. Understand what I'm saying? These groups are diverse ideologically, but they share a national unity project because they can agree that they want to live in something called a borderless democratic republic that will not have an electoral college. And they can agree that they can call that republic a borderless democratic republic or a borderless democracy. They also agree on what constitutional rights should be amended. And that means they have consensus on what meta ideology they could place their constitution on. I'm here to tell you something. If you're an American and you're still spinning in a corner trying to diagnose the country or explain the world around you, Americans are polarized not because we're racially and culturally incompatible. That's a surface answer. The crux of our problem stems from the fact that we're actually aspiring towards two different forms of government. If you're trying to conserve a federalist constitutional republic like myself, you're not compatible to live in a borderless democratic republic that won't have an electoral college. That doesn't make you racist. That doesn't make you a bad person. This comes down to nature. This comes down to your human constitution. So we should all accept right now and today that Democrats or global citizens have a right to want to live in a democracy that won't have borders, and we have the right to resist. We have the right to actually say, hold up, these territories that are aspiring towards that form of government should actually exist outside of the union they're in with.
Now, she's doing a lot of babbling. She made her initial point, but I think it's important. Some of you might not know exactly what communism is. So I'm going to let this video play. You take a listen to this, and then we'll get back to, I got one or two more videos I want you to check out.
And Karl Marx watched factories in 1840s England and saw the same thing everywhere. Owners getting rich, workers getting sick. He wrote a book about it, said the entire system was designed to keep it that way. That capitalism would always make the rich richer and the poor poorer until workers had nothing left to lose. Then they'd revolt, take the factories, run them collectively, no owners, no bosses, no classes. Eventually the government...
Somebody type Robin Hood, steal from the rich and give to the poor. That's just that's what communism is. Okay?
Itself would become unnecessary and disappear. Everyone contributes what they can. Everyone takes what they need. That was the theory. The practice looked completely different. Russia tried it in 1917. Within years, it was a one-party dictatorship. Stalin killed millions of his own people to maintain control. China tried it.
Shout out to KB Film Room.
Mao's policies caused the largest famine in human history, 45 million dead. Cuba tried it. Castro imprisoned political opponents for decades.
So basically, they're just explaining to you how communism always fails, okay? But the other thing, and the most important thing we need to understand is that, in my opinion, you have a lot of outside agitators who come to the United States from these countries that are not America's friends, and they pretend like they're on the side of Black people, and they're really not. I want y'all to listen to this. Listen to this, and y'all tell me if this sounds suspicious.
Said about Black Americans getting reparations. Watch this.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Kimura. I'm a fifth-generation Chinese and Japanese American and a fifth-generation San Franciscan. I'm here today to fully support Black reparations because this is the bare-ass minimum. Period. The bare-ass minimum. History is enough of a reason.
Emotional appeal. She might as well have said, I got some hot sauce in my bag. Are you guys seeing the con? I mean, just saying. Does she really look like she cares about reparations for Black people? I'm just asking questions. Or is this her trying to make an emotional appeal to Black people to kind of stir up the racial dissension? I'm just saying. And keep America, at odds with each other. You tell me what you think. And I'm not saying this young lady is. I'm just asking questions.
The dehumanization that we've seen is enough of a reason for why we need redress and reparations now. This is not an impossible reality, right? We've seen this with the Japanese Americans in the late 1980s. They received on a federal level reparations. And the fact that Black folks and our Black community and our brothers and sisters are still waiting for a formal apology, I'm just going to leave that there just to simmer. And I just really want to note, especially as an Asian American woman, I would not be here if it were not for the Black liberation struggle, the Black freedom fighters, culture creators, and the world builders that have fought for my liberation. So,
thank you. Thank you for your comments.
She's not wrong. Japanese Americans got federal reparations in the late.
She got all the talking points, huh? But I'm just saying, I want y'all to understand something. We have people right online, right? That cause dissension. So
Apparently, when the Black Panthers visited China in 1972, they stayed on my campus of Peking University. A lot of their
Black Panthers did what? Where did they visit? Somebody type Black Panther. Where did the Black Panthers? Did y'all hear about this in your Black history? Let's listen to this very carefully.
I just found out about this, but apparently when the Black Panthers visited China in 1972, they stayed on my campus of Peking University. A lot of their goal was to learn about the international solidarity movement, learn traditional Chinese medicine.
So the Black Panther Party visited communist China. I wonder why.
I've known about this history of the Black Panthers' visit to China in the 70s for a few years now, but it was especially touching to know that they lived and taught at a place I've been calling home for the last year, especially because they taught in the building Jingyuan 3 where my master's program is in, when it used to be the School of Foreign Languages. Hugh Newton, one of the founders of the Black Panthers Party, met with then Premier Zhou Enlai and was also an avid follower of Mao. He was especially aligned with Mao's ideas of solidarity of all oppressed people of the world, and that the black struggle was one that China should be concerned with. There's so much more history to this visit, including clinics in Oakland that now do acupuncture and traditional medicine because of this.
I wonder what else they teach in the Black. What else? Do you think the Black Panthers went over there to learn acupuncture? What do you think they went to learn?
Visit, as well as scholars and writers and historians like R.D.G. Kelly and Robinson Todd Fraser who have written about this. But for now, it's a lovely feeling to be able to know that home feels a little bit more connected.
Do y'all think that the Chinese people love Black people? Do y'all think that they, I mean, I'm just saying, what does your gut feeling tell you? Just respectfully, you know, no racism in the chat room. Do you think that the Chinese people brought Black people, the Black Panther Party over there to China to teach them acupuncture? Is that what you think? Who thinks that? If you think that, or could it possibly be they brought them over there to continue educating them and brainwashing them? And that being the case, now that you understand, and you keep in mind that China is America's sworn enemy, right? So does this make more sense now? I want you to listen. Does this make more sense?
Conspiracy theory. It's literally on his Wikipedia page, but they didn't do it because he was the leader of the Black Panthers. They did it because he was doing something that was much more threatening to the US government. You see, in the years before he was murdered,
I wonder what Fred Hampton, who was the leader of the Black Panther Party, was doing that was much worse and more threatening to the United States than leading the Black Panther Party. Somebody type, what was he doing in the chat room?
Hampton formed a group called the Rainbow Coalition, which was an alliance between the Black Panthers and the Young Patriots, which were a group that represented poor rural white people. In declassified
poor rural white people. Somebody type socialism in the chat room.
Documents, the director of the FBI at the time, J. Edgar Hoover, specifically talks about his concern that Fred Hampton could become a quote-unquote messiah who unites working-class people across racial lines. So on
working class people, you see the language? You see the language? I know it sounds good, right? But these are key terms related to socialism and communism. You understand what I'm saying? So our Black leaders from the 1920s all the way up to the 1970s were inundated with this communist philosophy and these communist beliefs. So it wasn't that they were just leading a ragtag group of Black people with a few pistols. That's not a problem. There's always been guns in the United States. It was more of the ideology. It was that China and these other enemies of the United States were using these Black people basically as Manchurian candidates, as rebel rousers, to bring in, you know, communism and socialism and undermine what we have going on here. A system, communism, that's already failed. Again, remember, how did they even become to believe that this socialism or communism was bringing forth answers? Remember where we came from. Remember the desperate situation that Black people were in after stuff had got burnt up, houses, land was stolen. Think about that. All right. So we were looking for answers. Somebody type answers in the chat room. I'm gonna let this gentleman finish.
December 4th, 1969, the Chicago police, working at the behest of the FBI, raided the Black Panther headquarters and shot Fred Hampton in his bed while he was asleep. If you think stuff like this isn't happening anymore, you're a fool. We already know from leaked documents and whistleblowers that the government is actively monitoring working class movements. A lot of protest movements take place on
working class. Again, we're talking about socialism and communism. This is what's going on. Is it start? Look, you don't have to like what I'm saying. I'm just asking you questions. You can do your own research. But it's plenty of black folk out there talking stuff about the government. However, it's not a lot of black folk trying to bring in a competitive ideology, okay, or being used by foreign agents, which is what I see was happening, which is why those Black Panthers and all those so-called revolutionaries were such a threat to the United States government, because they were undermining what makes America America, and that was the capitalist system that we have. Let's keep listening.
Online now, and I know from personal experience that anytime you post something even vaguely political, an army of weird accounts with almost no followers show up to make incendiary comments.
All right. So you guys kind of get the point of where I'm going with this. Now I'm gonna go ahead and try to bring this on home, because it's important for me to tie this up like a bow, so you can actually learn something. And shout out to everybody who's been contributing to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I hope you all have learned something. Please subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 200,000. But again, that's why socialism, you know, look, it sounded like the answer to black people at the time. We were watching our people get lynched and dispossessed of land. We were segregated. We were underpaid and over-policed and legally humiliated. And, you know, America said, well, you know, that's capitalism, that's democracy. And so socialism said the problem wasn't merely racism. Oh, no, it's about power and wealth and ownership and labor exploitation and economic control. And from the viewpoint of many black people at the time, the rich in America were overwhelmingly white. And I'm not saying all white people are rich. There's some poor white people listening to me right now. Shout out to all the poor white people who grew up hard in trailer parks and got a cousin on meth. But bottom line is, the rich white people in America, or the rich people in America, were overwhelmingly white, and people benefiting from black labor were white. Okay, so when socialism said, hey, take from the rich and give to the poor, many black people heard it as if, okay, if white people, if white America won't let us keep what we built and honor our land titles and protect our towns and give us equal courts and let us compete fairly, then maybe the government should be forced to take from white people who hoard the wealth and redistribute it to black people who've been robbed. Damn. Really? Okay, Dennis. Okay. But see, that was the emotional and political logic. We ran our leaders off, right? We didn't have institutions. We didn't have jobs. We tried to build. They burned it down. So many black leaders and thinkers reached to the point where they said, well, you know, in effect, if we can't be allowed to build and keep our own under the capitalist system, then maybe the answer is to force the government to redistribute power and land and money and labor and rights and housing and protection. So socialism was never the answer. We have to understand that, okay? But we also need to understand why it was attractive to our leaders, okay? And those ideas helped explain a real problem that gave black thinkers language to talk about class and labor and exploitation and imperialism and capitalism and police power and prisons and global oppression. We weren't talking about that before. Frederick Douglass wasn't talking about that. That was an import. That came from this socialist and communist rhetoric. And they help explain why an individual black person's effort wasn't enough when the courts were against you, the banks wouldn't give you a loan, the police over-police your community, the land system wouldn't let you buy, rent, you know, and the political offices were controlled by people committed to keeping black people beneath them. So when terms like racial capitalism popped up, or internal colonialism, or anti-imperialism, or political prisoner, right, and prison industrial complex, and decolonization, that changed how many black people understood America. The struggle was no longer about full citizenship and equal rights and land and schools and businesses and ownership and being an institution building inside of America, like our foundational Black Americans wanted, it became this global fight against capitalism and empire. Somebody type, what do they call colonizers? It's a fight against the colonizers and Western power. And see, that shift mattered, because just like Marcus Garvey and his Back to Africa movement, it moved Black politics away from what's going on right here in Black America. Instead of being Black America centered on our institutions and building our land, right, towards global ideology, and that's what we started doing. We started focusing on what was going on everywhere else. And it encouraged Black people to see America not as our homeland to be claimed and corrected and controlled like we had always done, but as an enemy to be rejected and exposed and weakened. And that's what we're doing right now. That's why there's so many Black people right now who are anti-American, right? I'm not telling the truth. Let's keep going. So that's that's dangerous for foundational Black Americans, because we don't have another country to go to. We don't have an army. We don't have a currency. We don't have another land base. We don't have another government that owes us anything, not even citizenship or protection. So if America weakens, we don't get stronger, family. We get exposed. And that's why we have to be very careful with these outside ideologies and these outside struggles that we pick up. They may sharpen our vocabulary. And in the 1920s, remember what we were going through. Somebody type Red Summer, Tulsa, lynchings. Look, we were looking for answers for people who are at their wits' end, but they can also they can also untether us from our own strategic realities. You see? And see, that's the answer that that answer can't we can't, our goal cannot be to stop building in America. Okay. The answer has to be, has to understand what was done to us. We need to understand that. We need to learn from why those ideologies appeal to our leaders, and then make sure our politics remains rooted in our own survival here, okay? In our own institutions here, in our land ownership here, in our families here, and our future inside of our country that our ancestors helped build and invest in. Now, as I explained, and I'm gonna go deeper into this, the fifth answer is that we were exploited by foreigners. You don't think China likes you, do you? Do you think Russia likes you? Russia is one of the most racist countries on the planet, more racist than Russia, America. Did y'all know that? Look it up look it up. There's some stuff on Google about that recently, right? And see, these China and Russia, these weren't foreign countries just sitting back laughing at America's racial problems. They deliberately, it was a deliberate ideological campaign. America's enemies didn't create our grievances, but they learned how to study them, and they used them to recruit around them, and they turned them into political weapons during the Cold War. This is after the end of World War II. The Soviet Union and international communist movements understood that America's racial hypocrisy was one easy way to attack the United States. And America was telling the world it represented freedom and democracy and capitalism and human rights, while Black America was being lynched and segregated and underpaid and over-policed and denied housing and treated like dogs, basically. So the Soviets didn't have to invent the contradiction, but they amplified it. And so you had communist organizations actively trying to influence Black politics and labor organizations and intellectual life. They literally would bring them over there to Russia and educate them in their little colleges and stuff. Okay, and they cultivated Black intelligent people. They recruited Black writers and workers and organizers and other thinkers. People that like Paul Robeson, who was my frat brother, Benjamin J. Davis, Cyril Briggs, Claude McKay. These are very powerful and influential people, and they were connected in different ways to the communists and socialists and anti-colonial, and they were Soviet friendly with their politics. And the point is that foreign and left-wing ideological forces saw black suffering as a fertile ground for recruitment. And that influence didn't stop in the 1920s or the 1930s. So by the time we get to the 1950s and the 1960s, when some of y'all was born, okay, that language of socialism and Marxism and anti-imperialism and redistribution and revolutionary politics had become part of Black Americans' political conversation. All right? When you start hearing these leaders talking about we gonna help the poor, nothing wrong with helping the poor, but I'm just saying, those are code words. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't a communist, and he rejected violence. But even King moved toward a much stronger economic critique of America near the end of his life, which many people say which caused his life. What was he in Tennessee to do? Huh? What did y'all hear? They said Fred Hampton. Why was he killed? Because he was about to unite the poor the poor blacks and the poor whites, working class. And so by the time Martin Luther King showed up with his Poor People's Campaign in 1967, right? In 1968, King was talking about poverty, guaranteed income. What does guaranteed income mean? That's welfare. That's socialism. That's rob from the rich and give to the poor. He was talking about jobs and housing and economic rights and federal government obligation to help poor people. That's communism talk. That's not capitalist talk. That's not the talk of our ancestors. Our ancestors knew goddamn well white folk wasn't going to help us with a darn thing coming out of slavery. They took our watermelon patches. You understand? They wasn't helping us with nothing. They wasn't giving us anything. They would take something from you. You see what I'm saying? But again, this is where our leaders were. And see, that was a major shift from civil rights to economic redistribution. Think about that. That's a big shift. You went from helping black people to saying we're going to help all people and the poor. What are you talking about? And then even when we talk about somebody like the Black Panther Party who took that trip to China, they went even further. They were openly socialists and Marxists and anti-capitalists and revolutionary in their language, okay? How are you going to be anti-capitalist in a capitalist country? Think about that, okay? They were talking about food and prison and housing and healthcare, education. Y'all supposed to be protecting black people getting beat up by the police, and you didn't went too far. You see, and that's why they became a political target, not because they were stopping some cops in Oakland from beating up black people. That wasn't what it was about. Hell, even at their breakfast programs, okay, and their survival program, that wasn't just charity. They were giving a political education to people who were starting with the children. They were teaching children, black people, that the state owed them a handout because the system had robbed them. And socialism and Marxism repeated a basic mantra: the rich have too much, the poor have too little, and the government or the revolution must take from the rich and redistribute to the poor. And in the context of foundational Black American, listen, are you learning something? In the context of foundational Black America, when socialism said take from the rich and give to the poor, many black folk heard take from rich white people, okay, and that robbed us and give us some of that back. That's what they heard. And that's how legitimate grievance gets converted into dependency ideology. But the ideological trap came when that debt became a permanent mindset. You see, the government owes me. Somebody type entitlement in the chat room. Somebody type the rich owe me. White people owe me. The system owes me. So I don't have to build until somebody gives me something. And that's where the poison enters. A demand for justice becomes a posture for dependency. A claim for repair becomes an excuse for not to produce. A historical debt becomes a cultural habit of waiting. Now, let's bring it all home. Somebody say, bring it home, Uncle D. Somebody type, bring it on home. Now, combine all that with y'all's favorite party. I ain't talking about the party at your birthday party. I'm talking about the Democrat Party. All right? Now, look, I'm a registered Democrat. And you all know I voted Republican. Well, I ain't vote Republican. I voted for Trump, okay? That doesn't mean I'm going to keep voting for Republicans on the president level, but I voted for Trump because at the point where they open this border, which is about 50, 60, 100 miles from my house, and these people start flooding up here and little girls is getting unalive, I'm like, no, this has got to end. Okay, I'm just saying, y'all can call me mean, nasty names. I done sold out because I voted for Trump. Y'all liked Trump back in the 80s when he was in all those rap songs and when he was in Home Alone. But bottom line is, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I don't tell you how to vote. I tell you to vote your interests. Okay, but now, when we combine all of that you heard with the Democrat Party's political welfare model, the setup becomes almost perfect. This didn't happen overnight. It happened over decades and generations. The first major federal foundation was the Social Security Act of 1935, signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Okay, that law created aid to dependent children. It was called the ADC, which was originally designed to help poor children in homes where the father was dead or absent or incapacitated or otherwise unable to support his kids. We can't let the kids, somebody type FDR love the kids. Somebody type love the kids in the chat room. All right, and at the beginning of this kind of program, it wasn't imagined that it was going to imagine as a permanent political identity. It was supposed to be a safety net for little kids. We're trying to feed the kids. But over time, that safety net became something way bigger. So here we are. Let's fast forward to 1962. Congress changed the name of the ADC, or aid to dependent children, to aid to families with dependent children, the AFDC. So we not just help kids, we help the whole family now. And that change matters because the government was no longer just talking about dependent children. It was now openly talking about families and family structure and social services and public assistance and government involvement in the household. The government has now got in your business. Somebody type Zaddy in the chat room. Somebody type Zaddy in the chat room. Zaddy is now in your business. Okay, so the same year they came up with the Public Welfare Amendment in 1962, and that expanded this federal reimbursement for social services and opened up more welfare-related services to former and potential AFDC families. In other words, the federal government was becoming more deeply involved in your domestic life of poor people. Okay, and it then came to the 1960s, and you got Lyndon B. Johnson. He announced the war on poverty. Somebody type war on poverty during the State of the Union address. On August 20th, 1964, LBJ signed the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. That law created an expanded programs tied to community action, job training, youth programs, education, and poverty relief. Somebody type more welfare in the chat room. Somebody type welfare. Somebody, next year, Congress passed the Food Stamp Act. You know those little books with the little pink books you see people count? Hang on, $10. Here you go. I hope y'all never sold them food stamps. I'm going to put y'all on the list. If I find out any of y'all sold some food stamps back in the 1980s, y'all, if y'all was out there buying food stamps from crackheads in the 1980s, you're wrong. You're wrong for that. Okay? You're wrong for that. I'm gonna put you on the what's the PPL loan hit list. But anyway, so food stamps popped up in 1964. Congress passed a major Great Society legislation, including elementary, secondary education, and housing, urban development, all that good stuff. Then they came up with Social Security amendments, which created Medicare and Medicaid. This stuff just popped up. Your grandparents didn't have it, okay? But by the mid-1960s, the federal government had entered the space of poverty. So they got poverty, housing, food, education, healthcare, employment, family structure, social services in a way it never been done before. So now the government is your zaddy. Somebody type zaddy in the chat room. Zaddy. Anybody who can't spell zaddy, zaddy. Not daddy, zaddy. The big government has become your zaddy, okay? They all in your cha-chas, all right? They might as well be making love to your baby mama. They are giving her everything she needs. She got a place to live. She got food stamps. She got milk for them kids. They coming by with the truck with the big block cheese. Who made a grilled cheese sandwich with that big block USDA cheese? I know you did. But anyway, black people black people been locked. I want you to understand now, it's 1960s. Black people, we've been locked out of land. Okay. Y'all ran us off grandma's farm. We can't join the union. The neighborhoods are bad. The schools are bad. Can't get a job. Banks won't give us a loan. We can't even use the damn water faucet or the damn swimming pool. No political power and no basic legal education. And our leaders have been brainwashed with socialism and told that we're owed something. Somebody type, we owed something, right? We are primed and ready. You understand me? It's Saturday night. You done brought that gal some roses and some chocolates, a little bit of that cheap wine from the liquor store. She primed and ready. That's what the black community was. Y'all was primed and ready for the Democrat Party. Y'all was ready. Somebody type ready. We ready. Come on now. We was primed and ready. We believe they owed us something. We did. And then the government came along and said, we're going to help the poor. And we was the poor. We're gonna fight poverty. And we was impoverished. We were into poverty. We're gonna provide food and housing and healthcare and jobs and education and social support. And that sounded like justice to black people who had been denied justice. Okay. And see, this is where the danger came in. Okay. Because the Democrat Party learned that if it spoke the language of the civil rights and poverty relief and welfare and housing assistance and food assistance and healthcare, and government jobs and public programs and redistribution, it could secure black political loyalty for generations. And the message was basically this: Republicans are racist. You heard them how they talk about conservatives. They don't care about you. They're only for big business and capitalism. And remember, capitalism is bad because y'all are socialists now, right? Y'all been brainwashed to believe capitalism can't work for you because that's what your elites told you. Because every time you did capitalism, they just came through and burned up all your stuff and lynched you. All right? Republicans just want to abuse you. Racist white America, a bunch of Republicans, most of them are down south anyway, and they robbed y'all of y'all land, right? And what we're going to do is the Democrat Party, we're going to use the government, somebody type Zaddy, we're going to use the government to protect you and feed you, give you a house in the projects. We're going to educate them, children of yours. We're going to provide all these programs for you. We're basically going to give you what you feel you're entitled to. Somebody type entitlement. See, and that sounded like justice to a lot of black people. That's what it sounded. It sounded like justice. Somebody type justice. Y'all took all this from us? Yeah, we owed this anyway. But over time, it also trained far too many black people to look to government before they look to themselves. See? And that's the danger. And our ancestors weren't waiting on the government before they built. They understood politics, but politics wasn't a substitute for building. We knew that. You can't vote your way into a new house. You can't vote your way into some money in the bank. Politics was there to support, to protect what you've already built. But see, the welfare state model slowly changed that relationship. Instead of asking, what can I own? Now you got black folks saying, what do I qualify for? Instead of asking, what institutions can I build? Too many black folks start saying, well, what program can we get into? Instead of saying, how do we control our land and schools and banks and businesses and media and law and capital, black folks start saying, well, what benefits are available? And see, that's not power, that's managed dependency. And now, are y'all learning something, by the way? Am I boring you all? Are you learning something? I need to know. I'm excited about this. It's exciting to me. It's exciting. We still on the same subject. I'm gonna bring all this home to degeneracy in a minute, but I'm excited. If you excited, type excited in the chat room. You learning something? You learning something? Okay. All right. So now, at the same time, okay, at the same time all this is going on, right now, somebody type right now at the same time back then, right? Something else was happening at the same time. Second wave feminism. Second wave feminism began rising in the early 1960s. In 1963, you had a lady named Betty Freeman. She published something called The Feminine Mystique. In 1963, Congress passed the Equal Pay Act. 1964, Title VII, Civil Rights Act. Stop, women couldn't even work, girl. You couldn't even get a damn bank account, right? So they passed that. 1966, you had the National Organization for Women was founded. On October 29th, you had 1960. Now, somebody type now. It adopted a statement of purpose calling for women to enter full participation in society. You got to get a job, girl. These feminists said women need to work as hard as men. That's what they said. Those feminists said these women, we need to get these women out here. Women need to be able to work as hard as men. 9 to 5, 16-hour days. That's what they fought for. Get out of that kitchen, sitting at home, living that soft life, girl. You're going to work. You can be a man now. Congratulations, ladies. You got equal rights. Now you are able to work as hard as a man. You should be proud of the accomplishments of these feminists. I'm proud. I'm happy for you. And then, of course, Roe v. Wade, that give you a right to, baby deletions. Okay, so now they can't hold you back with a baby. You got to get on out there and work as hard as a man. Okay, I want you ladies to work as hard as, I want you to get all the plumbing jobs available. Okay, not the good ones. I want you to be down up under the sewer where the rats are and the roaches are. Now you can do that because of feminism. Shout out to feminism. Listen, feminism gets the hand clap. Shout out to feminism. That's right. That is right. But anyway, so during the same general period when the welfare state is expanded, you got this feminist ideology was also expanded. And now here's where black people have to be honest. White women were rebelling against a system where white men actually held power over them. And it was just rich white men. They controlled the government, corporations, courts, universities, banks, unions, the police, political parties. So when white women talked about a patriarchy, they were talking about the system that white men actually had the reins over in America. Black men didn't have anything to do with that. That wasn't us. We not white men. Black men didn't have control of America. Y'all might have got in a few fights in front of your grandma's house about, but that was it. Y'all been kicking each other butt for a long time. But black men didn't control banks and courts and Congress and corporate America. A university, we couldn't be in charge of where you live or where you went to school. That's that we didn't run the federal government. Hell, black men were being excluded and hunted and underpaid and incarcerated and politically neutralized ourselves. So when a lot of black women imported these same feminist language that white women were using against white men and male power, I guess, and they turned it on black men and it created a dangerous confusion. Somebody type, hold on a minute, in the chat room. It allowed a lot of black women to treat black men as though black men were the local version of white male patriarchy, even though black men had never held the reins of power in this country. And the shift in that rift was exploited. Okay, so the welfare state gave a government, became Zaddy. You didn't need your black men anymore. You had Zaddy. Okay, he had a stronger role in your home. Instead of working out your differences as black folk had did, and like most people do in their family units, and coming to some understanding, black women said, she had financial option provided to her by welfare and the government to summarily dismiss black men from the home. I don't need you anyway, Larry, right? Or as the famous saying goes, I don't need no man. And so black family was already under pressure from job loss, discrimination, housing policy, incarceration, all this economic displacement. And that combination was devastating. It told black men you're not necessary. It told black women you're oppressed by black men in the same way white women are oppressed by white men. It told children the government is your new zaddy, okay, and they can replace the family. It told politicians benefits can produce loyalty. Just pay them. It told activists grievance can become power. And it told the community, if the systems owe you, then building for yourself is secondary. Okay? And that's how the entitlement grows. That's why y'all don't like me. That's why y'all rather hear somebody say we're victims. And that's why when I came out a couple of weeks ago and said, no, this is what the law says, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you you're a victim when this is clearly what the law says, even if it turns out to be that you're not the victim, you're the perpetrator. You understand? Now, but because black people are natural, you know, so none of it, look, the entitlement is there is not because black people are quote unquote lazy. Somebody type IQ in the chat room. Okay. It's not that black women are naturally disloyal or black men are naturally irresponsible. Entitlement grows when a people are injured and then taught to interpret every injury as a claim against somebody else while being discouraged from rebuilding the internal institutions that once made them strong or us strong. That was the trap. You see? You understand? And here's another thing that's very peculiar. There was a gentleman named Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1965. The federal government asked him to put a study together and literally studied the black family at the exact time welfare programs were expanding and civil rights politics were shifting and feminism was on the rise and the Democrat Party was learning how to convert black suffering into long-term political loyalty. That says a lot. The government was studying us. Okay? Now, now here's the thing. It's a very important Supreme Court case. 1968, the Supreme Court decided the case called King v. Smith. And that case involved Alabama attempt to deny welfare, or as you heard, the AFDC benefits because a man wasn't legally obligated to support the children, was allegedly living in the home and connected to the mother. In other words, mama had a boyfriend living in the house that wasn't the daddy of the kids. And the court held that the AFDC couldn't be denied based on the so-called substitute father. Somebody type stepdaddy in the chat room. He wasn't even stepdaddy, he's just mama's friend. Somebody type mama's friend. All right? He didn't owe anything to the children. And legally, that protected the children from being cut off based on the moral policing of the mother. In other words, the government said, nah, this is feminism days. We're going to let this. She want to sleep with a man in the house and the kids there. Fine, we're not going to cut her off from her money. We still going to give her money. Zaddy was open-minded. Somebody type Zaddy in the chat room. Zaddy was the swinger. Yeah, you can have him for that. He was a sugar daddy. Here you go, baby. I just come through when I need something. All right? So you see the step to the step. So socially and politically, it also reflected the larger transition. The government was becoming the backstop when male support, marriage, and household stability were absent or disputed. And see, on one hand, the children should starve because adults failed. On the other hand, when the government becomes the permanent substitute father, families, marriage, private discipline, the community obligation, then the safety net becomes, you know, a structure of dependency. You see what I'm saying? All right? Y'all still with me? Just let me know. But see, then it all start coming to an end. Okay? Because when you fast forward, well, number one, in 1988, Reagan said, no, this is going on too long. So he came up with the Family Support Act. That's, you understand what I'm saying? They start, it pushed welfare more directly toward work, child support enforcement, paternity establishment. Shout out to Fuquan, paternity establishment, job training. Then when you roll around in 1986, Bill Clinton signed the personal responsibility work opportunity record. So now you have generations of people on welfare, and now they're being weeded off. It created time limits. Okay? You understand what's happening now? So stuff started drying up. But see, the political entitlement damage had already been done. You had multiple entitled generations. This is in the culture now. And so you got people who feel like they're entitled now. The government is taking their entitlements away. See, for decades, the message had been planted. The government is the provider. The system owes you something. The family can be bypassed. Men can be treated as optional. Political loyalty can be exchanged for benefits. Again, that doesn't mean every person on welfare felt entitled. That's not what I'm saying. Some people get in and get out. But that mindset, the Black leadership reinforced it. Okay, those socialist ideals. The point is that when political model repeatedly rewards dependency, weakens the role of father, treats government as a substitute household provider, and combines that with these ideologically hostility toward Black male authority, it changes the culture. The culture has changed. And once the culture changes, politics don't have to force dependency anymore. People begin defending it as a right. You understand? And that foreign exploitation worked well. Socialism, communism, Marxism, radical feminism, and all these revolutionary politics, it gave Black leaders language for exploitation, but it also encouraged many Black people to think in terms of redistribution of wealth instead of ownership, grievance instead of construction, government obligation instead of group obligation, and gender conflict instead of family rebuilding, and class struggle instead of institutional building. And the language may have been explained, the main language may have explained why we were poor, but it didn't necessarily teach us how to become powerful. Shout out to B. Hunter. And that's where Dr. King and the Panthers and all those other folk in that broader radical turn have to be understood carefully. King wanted justice for the poor, but King also believed in work and dignity and discipline and sacrifice and family and morality and responsibility. The Panthers wanted community control, but their ideology also helped normalize the idea that the government owed food, housing, and healthcare and protection because the system was illegitimate. Feminism wanted women to have the opportunity, but when that language was imported into Black America without recognizing that Black men were not white patriarchs, it intensified the rift between Black men and Black women. And once that message gets filtered down, this is complicated stuff. They're not even teaching this in grad school. Not like this, not like they can't do it in 3 hours, okay? All right, but again, when all that complicated stuff filters down into the culture, to Leon them and Riri, you know what they hear? Huh? It stopped being a serious critique of political economy and became street level entitlement. They owe me. The system owes me. The government owes me. Okay? Men are unnecessary. Fathers are optional. Family is oppressive. Discipline is respectability politics. Somebody else is responsible. Does this sound familiar? And see, that's the perfect setup for the victim mentality or victim begging. And they pass that same mindset down to children. And we looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. The culture has repeated itself in that message. They owe me. And eventually too many people stop thinking like builders and start thinking like claimants. They don't ask what can we own. They ask what can we get or what can we take. They don't ask what can we build. They ask who's going to provide it for me. They don't ask how do we control land, business, schools, media, law, and finance. They ask what program am I eligible for? And when you do think like that, they call you bougie or sellout or something like, what's wrong with you? You'll never succeed. That's what they tell you until you do, and then you're bougie. Okay? That's managed dependency. And it's dangerous because it feels like compassion while it destroys ambition. It feels like justice while it weakens discipline. It feels like repair while it replaces ownership. You see? See, real power isn't it being dependent on whoever controls the benefits. They took real Black suffering and converted it into a worldview where somebody else always owes us something. And when those claims aren't met, now you have somebody who feels like they're a victim. I want you to pay attention. See? And the thing about victimhood is when people feel like they've been treated unjustly, right? They will begin to behave unjustly, right? Somebody steal your car, you want to go steal somebody else's car, kind of like that sort of logic. You see, they will begin to see anybody who has anything as an oppressor. Shout out to the Be Surreal. And thereafter, they begin to victimize others. In other words, if the law doesn't protect me, and the government doesn't give me what I'm entitled to, I'm gonna get mine, even if it means breaking the law. You see where I'm going now? Now we into when y'all was 1970s, 1980s. We in survival mode. We full-fledged victims. See, by the time we get there, I'm almost finished. I know y'all tired of listening to me, but we're gonna learn something. Y'all thought I was gonna be here to talk about some court cases. No, you're gonna learn something today. Somebody type today. You learning something today. Okay? So by the time we get to the 1970s and 1980s, the Black community is toe up. It's on the ropes. All those older institutions that held us together, the church, the colleges, the Black business districts, all that, the professional class, they done moved away, got them some white women. Somebody type Snowbunny in the chat room. They done moved out. We tired of y'all, right? And the Black church, you got just Reverend Chickenfoot. That's the only one in there. No more good, no more of that political class, right? This is the generation we grew up in. The family structure is under pressure, baby. Woo, ain't no daddy in the house. Ain't no man. Your mama be in there Saturday morning listening to Don't Blame Mr. Charlie. Mr. Charlie is just a man, and he's doing the best he can. Y'all know all them old songs about cheating on each other. That's all them old songs about cheating on each other and snorting cocaine and drugs. That's crazy as hell. And meet somebody at the disco. But anyway, the family and too many people were no longer thinking like we can get it for ourselves. They looking like victims. We 5 generations in and you owe me something, right? We owed something. They didn't, and they didn't get it. So when the jobs start leaving the Black community for decades, Black men have been able to find work in factories and plants and mills and railroads and steel and auto shipping and meat packing and construction and blue collar. But now, they weren't glamorous jobs, but they gave men a little money, a little structure and routine and pride and ability to provide for his family. Even if it was, a little bit, a little taste, right? Then you had to deal with deindustrialization. That hit. The manufacturing jobs moved out of cities. They moved out of the Black neighborhoods. They moved out of the Midwest, and eventually they moved out the country. And so factories closed and plants relocated and the work disappeared. And the white folk left. They got out of there. They got away from you all. They did not want to live around you Black people, right? All right. So they moved to the suburbs, right? And so now the social role of Black working man was attacked at its root. At least he had a little money. Now that's gone. So this is where we have to be honest. If Black Americans have still control all those businesses and land and farms and banks and stores and schools and local economies, had we had 100 years to build that up, white folks, had y'all not burned our stuff down, white folk, because y'all was jealous, had y'all not done all of that, we would be all right. But that jealousy is a horrible thing. Y'all undermine our little farms and banks and stuff like that and shut our little schools down. We say, hey, give us some more money from our school. No, we're going to let y'all go to school with the poor whites. You see what I'm saying? I'm just pointing it out. I know nobody likes to be blamed for anything. I know. That was so long ago. Really? It was really? Okay. Bottom line is, that's where it started. But moving forward now, we were hurting. Okay? But because of so much of our internal economic structure had already been weakened, we were dependent on jobs controlled by other people. And in our minds, it was futile to rebuild because they would just burn it down again. That was the mindset that we had. The white man won't let me. And that's what these old folk been. It's not that you can't build it. They just gonna tear it. They're gonna find a way to undermine it. which was in the back of our collective mind all the time. The white man doesn't want me to have anything. And so when those jobs left, we didn't have enough of our own institutions to absorb the shock. And that created a generation of unemployed, dejected black men and black teenagers with no clear path to manhood and money and structure and respect. And nature hates a vacuum. Somebody type nature hates a vacuum. And so when legitimate income disappeared, somebody type 1980s and 1990s, when legitimate income disappears, illegal income becomes attractive. And that's when the drug economy popped off. Became one of the only functioning economies in too many black neighborhoods. First, you had that brown. Somebody typed that brown. They had that heron. They had that heron. Then that white girl came through. That white girl came through. And that yay area. You understand? That crack cocaine in the 1980s, it moved through the communities that were already weakened with jobs, poverty, family structure broke down. You don't even have somebody to watch you and say, don't do that. Institutional collapse. You had drugs came in and offered fast money where legal work had disappeared, and they offered status where honest employment had vanished. And they offer young men a way to feel powerful in communities where legitimate power had been stripped away. Okay? But see, here's the tragedy. We sold it to ourselves. I'm just trying to explain to y'all how we went from these hardworking people to being a bunch of degenerates. At least that's our public image. Okay? How did we go from marching in our Sunday best for civil rights in the 1950s to where we are right now? I'm just trying to get you there. Okay? So dope, the drug trade gave black men and black women a way to generate income. But the market was our own people. We sold this poison to our own neighborhoods. We sold addiction to our own family members. We sold destruction to our own future. So now the community had two problems at the same time. We had drug dealers and drug addicts and everything else that goes with that. Because where you just had gangs, now you got gang violence and drug turf wars. One group was making money by destroying the neighborhood, and the other group was being destroyed by the product. And then came the prison industrial complex, because wherever there's drugs, there's violence. And now you got convicts incarcerated from selling drugs, addicts unable to function, children growing up without parents, women trying to raise families alone, men either dead in prison, addicted, unemployed, or disconnected. And then, going in and out that prison, you catching all kind of stuff because you got your girlfriend in the penitentiary, right? Shout out to all them boys in the penitentiary. They got their girlfriends in the penitentiary, and they coming home, messing around with their baby mamas and passing out STDs. You see? All this sexual promiscuousness, complete breakdown. And see, that's how social collapse became so self-reproducing. A child raised in a home with addiction, instability, a father that's either not there or in and out of penitentiary, no structure, no money, no discipline. He or she doesn't start life in the same place as a child raised in a stable two-parent home with order, routine, education, expectation. And then here's the thing, even if it's not in your house, see, you gotta multiply that across the block, a neighborhood, a school, and a generation. Now, the dysfunction isn't just private, it becomes environmental. If your neighbor is a drug addict, everybody who had a neighbor who was a drug addict, raise your hand. Anybody in the chat room, if you had a neighbor who was a straight up drug, I don't talking about weed, I'm talking about that hard stuff. If you had a neighbor who was a drug addict, you know their children were unsupervised, and that affects your children too. You can't play with them. Okay? If a young man on the block is selling dope and carrying guns and fighting over corners, that affects your household too. If people can't behave at community meetings and block parties, y'all can't even take a carnival cruise. Why would I sit in a community meeting with you all? This is where the community is. We're not going to the school events because somebody's going to fight. You can barely go to church. All right, you better not go to Walmart. You better not go to the Waffle House after 1:30 p.m. In the park, it might be a fight on Juneteenth. You might get shot up. Public gatherings are dangerous, okay? Then guess what that does to community life? It starts to break down. Decent people retreat indoors. Stable families leave if they can. Businesses close and refuse to come back. Churches lose influence. Schools become overwhelmed, and the streets begin to govern what institutions use to control your culture. And that's why we can't treat crime and drugs and foulness and disorder as an isolated problem. They feed each other. Joblessness feeds drug trade. Drug trade feeds violence. Violence feeds incarceration. Incarceration removes men from the families. Addiction weakens women and men. Weak families produce unsupervised children. Unsupervised children become easy recruit for the streets. Schools then inherit children already shaped by chaos. Teachers become social workers. Police become permanent fixtures. The community becomes known to be dangerous. And then the property values drop. So overall wealth leaves the Black community. Businesses leave. And then people say, why won't anybody invest here? But investment requires order, and no serious community can build if the people inside it can't maintain basic public behavior. And this also helped create the modern gender war inside Black America. A lot of this was structural. I'm not denying it. Deindustrialization, job loss, drug markets, mass incarceration, welfare policy, housing policy, deconstruction of Black internal economy. It was real. But the structural damage still produces personal consequences. Black women want what women generally want. They want stability, protection, provision, a man who can build a household. They're not going to say it. They're going to say, I don't need a man, but that's what they want. Eventually. Okay? But that's the basic expectation for most women across all cultures. Shout out to my man, Phu Quan. And the problem is that too many Black men were stripped of legitimate economic ability to provide. So now you got women expecting provision from men who had been economically displaced, men feeling disrespected by women who are frustrated that they can't get what the other woman is getting from her man. That creates bitterness on both sides. Black women looked around and said, where are the responsible Black men at? Black men looked around and said, why am I being blamed for a system that took jobs and destroyed the neighborhoods and flooded the community with drugs and locked us up? And Black women felt abandoned, and Black men felt attacked, and Black women feel like they had to do everything alone, and Black men feel like they were the only wanted if they can provide, but insulted if they couldn't. So men left physically, you know what I'm talking about. Black went down to the corner store for a pack of Newports and a loaf of bread and never came home. You know what I'm talking about. Some of them left, some of them stayed, but they stopped leading. Some turned to the street for status. Some turned to the dope game, using and selling. Some turned to other women. Some ended up in the penitentiary. You see? Then you got the women left with the bills and the children. It became hard. They became more defensive. They became more resentful. They became less trusting. I mean, I'm not making an excuse. I'm just explaining how the breakdown happened. Don't be mad at me. I'm just telling you what happened. You see? So now the enemy is not only external oppression, the enemy is also internal decay. And if we don't confront that degeneracy directly, then the very people who survived slavery, Jim Crow, drugs, welfare dependency, crime, and political exploitation may lose the future, not because we lack the talent, intelligence, money, or opportunity, but because we lack the discipline to protect what we built. Understand? Woo! Well, I'm going to take the opportunity to read these super chats. I want to thank everybody for the time you spent with me. I got a couple of more things to say, but I want to take the opportunity to give a shout out to everybody who contributed to the super chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. You don't owe me anything. I want y'all to remind y'all of that. I do hope y'all learned something. If you learned something, let me know you learned something by typing the L in the chat room, or type of L in the chat room. If you learned something, just type L. I learned. Did you learn something you didn't know? That's what I want to know, because I did it quick. I was talking fast. I drank two, all this water is gone. Why y'all say I'm drinking moonshine? I don't drink moon. This is water. See how beautiful I am? My face is clearing up. I'm drinking water every night. But anyway, I'm glad y'all learned something. Let's go ahead and read these. We got 15 super chat. Who is this? He said, Pete, 6,300. Thank you for covering this. I was curious to hear your analysis. Thank you so much. Hey, Mrs. Spurling, we've learned a lot from you. Can you briefly tell us what Trayvon Martin should have done when he noticed Zimmer is following him? He had a right to defend himself if he was attacked. It's just he shouldn't have been bashing his head in on the ground. Once you get somebody on the ground, don't hit them anymore. Get up and detach and run away as soon as you can. That's what you should do. Okay, because if you start making a person feel like their life is in threat, life is in danger, and they're about to suffer serious bodily harm, then a reasonable person would say that he had a right to defend himself with deadly force, and that's what happened. Okay, but thank you for that question. I appreciate you guys. Jerry Neely, love your channel, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Jerry. Also, just supporting the content. Thank you, 101 back. But look, remember, you guys, this is the competition between YouTubers. Do you want liars, or you do want people who are you going to learn from and teach you something? If you support the truth, if you like this type of conversation, I can do a 4-hour live stream on trash and garbage and gobbledygook, but you're not going to learn anything. It's not going to help you in your life. You'll remember this conversation 20 years from now. We just gave you some answers over here. All right, that's what I'm trying to say. But you got to support it. You got to hit the subscribe button. You got to subscribe. You got to refer your friends. You got to come. But we try to keep it family friendly. I cut back on the cuss words every now and then. The Samuel L. Jackson might slip out, but for the most part, family, I try to do the best I can to give you something substantial. So thank you for supporting the content. I appreciate you tremendously for that. All right, let's go ahead and get Jessica Rabbit, 40. Hey, Dennis, I'll be a mom in the next few years. Would you advise teaching sons self-defense or exposure to the red pill? Look, of course you should teach your son self-defense, if for nothing else, so they can learn how to control themselves, okay? As far as red pill content, I understand where the guys are coming from. It's really just men comparing notes, but instead of being under the oak tree with your granddaddy and your uncles and your older brothers, because we don't have a community anymore, a lot of young men have to come on the internet and get the perspective of a lot of men who may or may not have qualified relationships that they could even talk about what a healthy relationship is. And so you have to keep that in mind. I'm very selective of the men I allow my children to be around. You see, like, I'm gonna say it like this. I don't really like funerals, but my Uncle Lucius passed away. He was a Marine. I got a lot of Marines in the family. He was a Marine. My Aunt Geneva, I put a picture of my Aunt Geneva. She was one of my favorite people. Aunt Geneva was one of my favorite. Love my Aunt Geneva. She was Mississippi, and she's my mama's older sister. So she cooked. Boy, Aunt Geneva could cook. She was just a wonderful housewife, and she was married to this brother. He was black and Mexican. His daddy was black. His mom was Mexican. He ended up going to Vietnam, and he ended up meeting my Aunt Geneva out in California when we moved out there. And he was just always just a great husband, just a wonderful husband, long-standing. And Aunt Geneva, she had a couple of kids before they got married, but he treated them just like his own. And he had 2 children, and I just always had so much great respect for him and Aunt Geneva and the home that they kept. Aunt Geneva, they lived in a place called Palmdale, which is about an hour north of Los Angeles. And I would go out there, and it's just like, man, this is like one of the best homes to be in. It was just just the stability of the home. It was always clean. Janine was always making some cornbread and collard greens or something like that, man. I just like to go out there and eat. So I just love that home. So when he passed away, and they stayed married, they might marry like 50 years. And so when he passed away last summer, I dropped everything I was doing and we drove up to Austin to his funeral. And they, of course, they would ask me to speak. So I spoke and I said, you know, and all three of my boys were with me. And I said, you know, I always want to give honor to great men, great examples of manhood. And, you know, and that's why I wanted to show that man respect. I got caught stealing something out of Zodi's when I was 4 years old. And my mama wouldn't come pick me up from the Zodi's. I was still in these little stomper trucks. You know, you put a little battery in them, and they'll go zzz. So I'm up there. I done went up there like 4 times. I know theft prevention. No, they see me coming up there, this little badass back in, and I put them down in my crotch like Dante did in that case. And anyway, little lady caught me, put me in handcuffs and put me in the back. I'm 4 years old. I don't know, about 4 or 5 years. I'm walking up the goddamn street by myself, no parental supervision. But anyway, man, my mama wouldn't come get me. So I made a phone call to my grandma's house, and Uncle Lucius came to get me out the back of the, they was gonna send my ass to the juvie. But Uncle Lucius came and got me out the back of the Zodi's. He ain't say nothing. I hopped in his pickup truck. My little cousin Eric was with me. But I remember that, man. I remember that. And he was so proud of me, you know, becoming a lawyer and staying out of trouble and having my own family. You know, and I always remember that. But he was a great example of manhood and fatherhood. So, and a married man. Okay. So when you ask me the question is, should I let my son listen to Red Pill? My suggestion is you only allow your son to be around men that you want them to pattern themselves after. Every man is not qualified to teach my sons. And I tell them that all the time. But what I've done with my son is that I've made them such, you know, and my wife is funny. She calls my oldest son saltines. She said they saltine because they're real rigid. They don't really speak a lot. My baby boy, he's a sweet boy. He nice. He'll talk to you. He's a little pudgy. He like to eat. He here now. And she's trying to figure out what kind of pie he wants to eat, as if he needs to eat a pie. Okay, he don't need to eat a pie. I can't eat no pies. I'm on a diet. Have y'all seen Uncle D face slimming up? I'm on an involuntary diet. She make me eat these little turkey and vegetables every day. Lean, that's all I eat. I used to eat collard greens. I get a cheat meal, but for the most part, I'm just eating. So I've lost like 30 pounds. I'm trying to get down, you know, I'm trying to get down to like 245. You know, this is my first time being under 300 pounds in like 4 years. I like being big and strong. I'm 6'4". I like being a big, strong man, big, manly, masculine man. I like that. But, you know, I realize your big ass better lose some weight. You're going to have some more kids. You better lose some weight. So I said, well, let me just get on back down to 245, you know, get back down to my player weight. Somebody type player weight in the chat room. Yeah. But no, baby, you need to introduce yourself, introduce your sons, if you have sons, to men that you want them to pattern themselves after. You don't just allow any man to influence your children. I'm gonna tell you now, most men are not good enough, are not qualified enough to speak to my children. Okay, my sons. And most of my sons will tell you when they're dealing with somebody who they recognize as inferior. I mean, I know y'all, you know, I know y'all don't like me, but as far as, you know, manhood qualities, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. You know what I'm saying? I'm a lawyer, highly educated. I made a good bit of money. You know what I'm saying? I got a fine wife. Even my ex-wife, still good looking. Baby mama fine. Must say something about me, okay? I got a good personality. I know how to talk to people, you know, got a house, cars, and all that stuff. And I'm tall and handsome and strong and not just a little pipsqueak with education. So, you know, as far as masculine qualities, I pretty much got all the stuff that most women say they want. I'm not saying I'm for every you know, and I'm very loyal. That's another thing. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't cheat on your girlfriend. Because that's the morality. Now, I done gone too long for this 9.99, Jessica Rabbit. So I'm gonna stop talking to you. I'm gonna move on to the next one. You got me talking too damn much to you, Jessica. I ain't gonna, but you heard what I said. Okay, but shout out to you. Thank you so much. Yardley, question: if Carmelo pled guilty, no trial, show remorse, you think he would have gotten a shot at manslaughter? If he pled guilty, it's like, what did he plead? They charged him with murder, man. I don't think they offered him a plea deal. I don't think they offered him, but they don't necessarily have to offer you a plea deal, baby. That's what you got to understand. Just because they don't have to offer. I don't think they offered. It was all or nothing. He could have copped a plea, and I don't know what he was gonna get. You know what I mean? I don't know what he was gonna get. But it's just a horrible situation, man. It's always better to walk away. Y'all don't have to like what I say, but it's better to walk away. Anyway, since I learned something, me are my pronoun. Me, him are my pronoun. Shout out to you. Thank you so much, me, him. Who else we got? Staying on code as black people has caused us to side with all the wrong people and fight for all the wrong things. Thank you so much. Who else we got in here? Brandon B 1778. Thank you for the $5, man. Also, KB Film Room. I've got a lot of respect for what you do. I appreciate people who tell the truth and have integrity to keep teaching boys how to be men. Thank you so much, family. I appreciate y'all, man. Where my old school ice lords at? Where my ice lords at? I ain't seen y'all in a minute. I need all my ice lords who've been here for a minute to type ice lord in the chat room. You know who you are. Shout out to Fuquan. Thank you so much. Always good to see you here. Super Sticker, thank you so much for the 99 cents. The B Sis Real, thank you so much for the $2. Also, Fuquan, my man, again, appreciate you. Appreciate you. And the culture is so damaged. Years ago, I took a black woman on a date, and when she asked if I smoked weed, I said no. She responded, "You act like a white boy. I knew the culture was in trouble." Let me tell you something. I just had this conversation with my oldest son. Look, fam, I don't know. Have y'all met my oldest son, Dennis, number 3? Okay, number 3 he is very soft-spoken. And he walking around with that trucker hat all the time. All he does is math. I heard he around here starting his own little construction company. Just as boring and dry as he wants to be. And I say, son, that's good. And I was actually telling my wife, I say, that's good for him. That is hood rat repellent. Okay. You ain't around here with gold teeth bopping, and you gonna repel all of them. I ain't got to worry about no ratchet grandchildren. You're gonna get a quiet little pudgy girl that's gonna be real quiet and be around here doing just what she's supposed to do. Okay, so that's hood rat repellent. That's good. That's good. I'm glad you don't smoke weed, Trip Mundo. H81. I'm glad you don't. I'm glad you now here popping off and showing off. You don't need that. You don't need to breed with that degeneracy, okay? Because you're gonna have some little degenerate kids, and you're not gonna like them. You're gonna go to the liquor store and go to the corner store for some Newports and a loaf of bread and never come home. You're gonna be tired of her and them kids, okay? So what I'm saying is, man, that's a good thing. Be yourself. All you young people out there who are stepping your game up and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to behave like that. Kudos to you. I'm proud of you. I don't care what anybody says. Let's go ahead and begin to change our public image. All right. That's what we need to do. We don't need to all this. Oh, you got to be hood and ratchet to be done. No. No more Megan Thee Stallions. Okay. No more of that. We're not going to do that. We're moving away from that. We are moving away from that because it is a matter of life and death. All right. Again, now let me talk to y'all. I want to talk directly to you rich, snooty black people. Okay. I want to talk to the middle class, upper middle class, and rich black people. I need to speak to you directly because y'all don't think this is your problem. All you upper echelons, okay, of black America. Okay. All you upper echelons. You know what I'm talking about. Okay. 17% of black people live below the poverty line. Okay. That means the rest, working, middle class, upper middle class are rich. That's who I'm talking to the 83% of you snooty black people. We are no longer 60% of people below the poverty line like we were in 1965. We're different people. We are not helpless like then. We don't need communism and social, and capitalism has worked for us. Okay? Capitalism has worked for us very well. All this complaining about what we don't have, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need the government, okay? However, okay, we have a degeneracy problem. And I'm not talking about just poor black people. I'm not talking about people who struggle. I'm talking about people who come from hard circumstances, because poverty and degeneracy are not the same thing. I want you to think about that. Our people have been poor for most of the time we've been in this country, and many of our poorest people had dignity and discipline and manners and shame and respect for the elders and respect for family and respect for work and respect for themselves. So you can be poor and still be honorable. You can be poor and still be clean. You can be poor and still have standards. You can be poor and still raise your children with structure. You can be poor and still carry yourself like somebody who understands your conduct affects more than just you. So let's not get cute and pretend this is about class. It's degeneracy. See, degeneracy doesn't have a wealth gap. What am I saying? There are black people with degrees who have degenerate traits. They behave like degenerate. You tell them the truth. You a school teacher and you twerking in the damn Sunday brunch with some mimosa in your hand. Okay? All right? I'm just saying, it's kids around. You got your little chi-chis squished together. You understand what I mean? There are black people with money who behave like lowlifes. And there are black people with titles and platforms and businesses and church positions, political influence and celebrity status and professional licenses who still exhibit that same reckless, vulgar, selfish, destructive, entitled, undisciplined behavior we criticize in the streets. Money does not automatically produce class. A degree from your favorite institution doesn't automatically produce character. A title doesn't automatically produce discipline. A person can be rich and still be a degenerate. A person can be educated and still be a fool. A person can be famous and still be a liability to people. And that's why the upper echelon of Black America needs to stop pretending that we can separate ourselves from this by whispering, that ain't us. It is us. And when the outside world refuses to make that distinction, we need not to. It is us when our children are judged by the public image created by people we don't know. And it is us when our sons are viewed through the lens of danger before they ever open their mouths. It is us when our daughters are treated as threats before they seen as humans. It is us when a police officer, a frightened civilian, or jurors look at a black person and sees every viral fight, every robbery clip, every mall takeover, every crime video, every vulgar public performance, and every image of disorder that has been broadcast to the world. And that's why this connects directly to that Carter v. United States case out of the DC appellate circuit. The reasonable person standard. Once the courts begin to allowing identity and race and lived experience and perception to enter the analysis of what a reasonable person would believe, Black people better understand the danger. Okay? The law may not stop with the reasonable Black man doing a police encounter. Somebody is going to try to flip that. Somebody is going to argue that the reasonable white man, somebody's going to say the reasonable white woman, the reasonable police officer, the reasonable immigrant who's looked at these nonstop videos of Black people fighting and robbing and looting and attacking and acting wild online. And then the question becomes whether that person's fear of Black people was reasonable. You see? And that's where this becomes deadly. If a white man kills an unarmed Black man and says, I was afraid, his lawyer may not say my client is racist. He'll dress it up. He'll say, my client had these lived experiences. My client saw every episode of First 48. He looked at all the videos on Instagram. My client saw what happened in America. My client believed he was in danger. My client didn't have time to investigate whether the black man was a lawyer or a doctor or a student or a father or a business owner or a student minding his business. He only had seconds to react. And once that argument reaches the jury, the public image of blackness becomes illegal ammunition. That's the danger. The stereotypes walks into the courtroom wearing a suit and calling himself reasonable fear. So the upper echelon of Black America has to stop being soft about this public degeneracy. We have to stop acting like every standard is oppression. We have to stop acting like every correction is betrayal. We have to stop acting like every criticism of public disorder is respectability politics. Respectability alone won't save us, but the absence of standards will continue to destroy us. There's a difference between loving our people and making excuses for conduct that gets our people harmed and stereotyped and policed and feared and prosecuted and killed. Let me tell you what we need to do. Somebody type solutions. We got money now. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. We're not poor people on the plantation anymore. That's not us. So what we need to do, each and every one of y'all, we need to shame people back into conformity. I want y'all to break out y'all Twitter fingers. You understand? We need to shame them. You need to roast them like a Thanksgiving Day ham. You hear me? We're not shaming people because they're poor. We're not shaming people because they're struggling. Okay? We're not shaming people because they're doing their best. But we do need to shame this destructive behavior. And anybody who calls you a sellout, a coon, a boule, or wannabe white, for shaming these people for this public lawlessness, for shaming folk for this criminality, for shaming folk for glorification of murder or trying to protect criminals and crooks. You understand? We need to shame this fatherless lifestyle. We need to shame vulgarity, which is being sold to our culture through rap songs or whatever. We need to shame entitlement that was been sold to us as justice. We need to shame all this begging being done and sold to us as politics. We need to shame people who have nothing to offer Black people except grievance, disorder, and excuses. Because the people with the microphone are not always the people building anything. Some of the loudest voices are not building schools and banks and businesses and families and churches and farms and trade programs and law firms and medical networks and media institutions or political power. They're building followings of Black pain. Look at the internet right now. If you get on the internet and lie to people and tell them what they want to hear and tell them they're oppressed, they will follow you by the million. That's why I ain't got but 100,000. They don't want to hear what I got to say. We teaching responsibility over here. Because see, a lot of those people turn Black suffering into content. They turn Black dysfunction into entertainment. They turn Black grievance into a brand. They're telling people what they are owed, but they're not teaching people what they have to build. They're teaching people how to complain, but they're not showing people how to govern themselves. They're teaching people how to demand, but not how to own. And those people have to be confronted. The beggars have to be confronted. The professional victims have to be confronted. The low-minded influence have to be confronted. The people who celebrate chaos have to be confronted. The people who call every form of discipline white supremacy or racism or bigotry have to be confronted. The people who act like Black liberation means rejecting order and family and work and education and marriage and ownership and moral responsibility have to be confronted by you. They can't be allowed to remain the public face of Black America while the builders sit quietly in the background. Y'all don't see me doing it. Don't invite me on your broadcast. I'm going to say it. Somebody type, Uncle D going to tell it. Uncle D don't hold back. Have y'all noticed that? See, we got to push them folk to the background. There's a place for them. But the builders need to step forward. The disciplined people have to step forward. The serious people have to step forward. The fathers have to step forward. The mothers have to step forward. The doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the engineers, the business owners, the judges, the tradesmen, the professors, the executives, the institution builders have to step forward. The pastors have to step forward. The church folk have to step forward. We have to become a force. We have to stop letting the lowest, loudest, most reckless people define what Blackness looks like to the world. This isn't about trying to impress white folk or any folk. This is about survival at this point. This is about legal reality. This is about image control in a world where image can become evidence, fear can become an argument, and racial perception can become part of the reasonableness standard or actions of other people. If Blackness itself becomes the target because of these other people's lived experiences, based on what they see on the internet of us, what we doing, then your suit won't save you. Your law degree won't save you. That big shiny car won't save you. That medical degree won't save you. Hell, all them vowels in your last name and your African or Caribbean accent won't save you. Your femaleness won't save you. Your gated community won't save you. Your title won't save you. Your resume won't save your son when somebody sees him as a threat before they see him as a human being. And that's why we have to continue building. We have to force our way to the forefront. We have to force our way into leadership positions. Listen to me. We have to be on school boards and city councils and county commissions and state legislators and judicial benches and police oversight boards and zoning boards and hospital boards and bank boards and university boards and media companies and construction contracts and land development projects and chambers of Congress and commerce and every institution that decides who gets power and who gets ignored. We can't keep shouting from the sidewalk while other people run the building. And we also have to protect ourselves against outside agitators. Listen to me. Everybody's speaking the language of Black liberation and pro-Black and all that blackity black. They're not here to liberate Black people. Some of these people just want to make us angry. They just want us to get loud and not strategic. These people are racially conscious, but economically weak. They're politically active, but institutionally dependent. They divided on gender, class, age, ideology, hell, complexion, skin color. You got people dividing biracials from whether their mama is white or the daddy is white. That's about crazy as a bag of wet cats. I'm blacker than you. My mama white. My daddy black though. Y'all crazy as hell. I listen. See, they want us begging and blaming and marching and posting and reacting while somebody else owns the land and controls the courts and controls the schools and controls the banks and controls the police and controls the media and controls the capital. We have to reject that. Look, America owes black people. White America did wrong to us back then when they burnt down all our stuff. But you know we did rebuild. That's evident by what we have now. We're richer now than we were then. So what does that say? Yeah, the courts did us wrong. I get that. The banks did us wrong. But if our final answer is only they owe us, then we become permanent claimants against a system that we still depend on. That's not power, is it? Power is ownership. Power is discipline. Power is law. Power is land, family, capital, education, organization, building institution that can protect the next generation. We have to build the United States of America because this is our country. You understand what I'm saying? We're not outsiders. This is our country. Our ancestors built this country. Our blood is in the soil. We did it for unpaid labor. We fought in all the wars. We worked in the fields. We built the cities, cleaned the homes, raised the children, staffed the hospitals, taught the students, preached in the churches, held the communities together. Even when the country didn't give us anything, they just held us in contempt. But we don't need to run from America. We need to claim our position in America. We need to master its institutions. We need to build our own infrastructure and force respect through organized power. And we have to rebuild Black infrastructure, which we've neglected. That means schools, families, churches, businesses, banks, credit unions, farms, trade programs, legal networks, medical networks, insurance companies, media platforms, civic organizations, political machines, youth programs, marriage culture, fatherhood culture, motherhood culture, health culture, discipline culture, ownership culture. We need full reconstruction of Black institutional life inside the United States. So the message is simple. The upper echelon, Black America, you can't sit in comfort while degenerates define the image and beggars define the politics. I don't tell you who to vote for. Vote your interest. Okay? But you also have a lot of outside agitators, right, are defining an agenda for us. And you got these ideological race hustlers trying to define the future. We need to step forward. We need to confront it. We need to correct it. We need to shame it. We need to build over it. We need to push it to the background. We need to take leadership. Because when Blackness itself is the target, private success isn't enough. Respectability alone won't save us. But power, discipline, ownership, infrastructure, image control, family structure, legal awareness, and collective standards just might. This is Uncle D. God bless you all. I love you. And as always said this time, I'm out.
In the Spurling podcast, hit the like button, subscribe.